The story begins with a boy named Masumi Makoto, who we learn has terrible luck when it comes to getting sent to another world. Instead of being blessed by a goddess and going on adventures with cute girls, his experience isn't so easy since he's not as good looking as your typical protagonist. On a day like any other, Makoto goes to school and he relaxes when he gets home, but he's suddenly summoned by the moon god Tsukuyomi. Makoto instantly recognizes him from an old Japanese legend, and Tsukuyomi tells him he needs to sign a contract and go to another world, just like his parents. We learn that Makoto's parents were originally from another world and were transferred to Japan to save themselves. But while making a deal with the goddess, they promise to one day offer their most precious possession. Makoto realizes that the god is talking about him and that he must fulfill the contract or else one of his sisters will be taken, so he ends up agreeing to go. After signing the contract, Tsukuyomi grants Makoto all the power he can give to help him in the other world, and even promises to delete his browser history. Makoto is sent to the new world, but with the warning that the goddess he's going to meet is problematic. Makoto appears before the goddess, but she's instantly disgusted to see him. She ridicules him, calling him too ugly to be the hero for her world. She claims that she has already found a more suitable hero, so she decides to dump Makoto at the edge of the world with the other low-ranked creatures. However, since she must give him some power, she decides to give him the power to understand every language besides human. The goddess sends Makoto into the abyss, where he again encounters Tsukuyomi, who informs him that since he is no longer needed as a hero, he's free to do whatever he wants. However, Tsukuyomi adds that since Makoto had a harsh life in his previous world, he will have more power in this world. After this revelation, Tsukuyomi disappears, hoping to one day meet Makoto again. Makoto continues to fall from the sky, finally landing in a wasteland with no sign of life. He keeps walking for 3 days, but finds nothing, which makes him feel lonely and depressed. But suddenly, he hears the distant voice of a girl asking for help. He rushes toward the direction of the sound and finds a pig-like creature. The girl is being attacked by a two-headed monster, so he decides to save her. Makoto dashes at full speed and jumps on the creature with immense power, which surprisingly beheads it, and Makoto is shocked to see his own strength. The girl is terrified by the sight and tries to escape, but Makoto stops her and introduces himself. She is shocked that a human can understand her language, and Makoto is even more shocked that he's talking to a pig right now, but he tries to convince her that he's a nice guy. The girl introduces herself as Emma, and mentions she was headed to the Divine Mountain to offer herself as a sacrifice to the deity named Shin. Her village has been covered in a fog for a long time now, and it ruins their crop harvest, but whenever they offer someone to Shin, the fog is lifted. Before she goes through with the offering, Emma brings Makoto back to her house to thank him for saving her, and while having dinner with her brothers, Makoto soon realizes that magic is a basic skill for the people of this world, so he asks Emma to teach him. Emma starts by teaching some fire magic, which is supposed to be tricky, but Makoto learns it in one go, surprising everyone. They suspect Makoto to be at a high level, but when they check, he's only at level 1, so Emma continues to teach him. The next day, Makoto heads out to see if he can do something, so Emma won't need to sacrifice herself to Shin. Since he was in the school archery club, Makoto transforms fire into a bow and arrow. He shoots the arrow towards the entrance to the mountain, which surprisingly destroys the gate, leaving several men wounded, and we learn that these men were using Shin's name to scare the orcs. But since Makoto has attacked Shin's home, it triggers the creature to appear. A red fog covers everything, and a huge dragon emerges, attacking Makoto. But he dodges all of the dragon's attacks, even though the mist is blocking his vision. Makoto uses a new skill that lets him sense the dragon, so he dodges everything before launching his counterattack. He surrounds the dragon with fireballs and blasts her repeatedly, which shocks the creature, wondering how he has so much power. Makoto punches the dragon, knocking it down, but when Makoto lowers his guard, the dragon attacks using its magical eyes to trap him in an illusion. We see Makoto at the archery club talking to his junior Nikumi, who he has a crush on. She confesses her love to him and asks him for a date, but Makoto doesn't believe it since he isn't good looking. He realizes it's just an illusion and uses his power to dispel it. He understands the power Tsukuyomi gave him, and it allows him to manipulate his surroundings at will. He used it earlier to sense Shin through the fog, and now strengthens his fists with it to break through the illusion. He prepares to confront the dragon, but she no longer sees him as an enemy. She's impressed by his immense powers and his memories from the other world. She tells him she's seen his memories and wants to learn more about his world. So she offers him a contract to become his companion, which would benefit them both. Makoto is hesitant at first, but ends up agreeing, and the dragon begins the ritual. Strange magic surrounds them, and the dragon tries to form a balanced contract. But Makoto's power overwhelms her, so he ends up becoming her master, and she's transformed into a human. After a contract is formed, the weaker being takes the form of the stronger one, which is why she became a human, but her appearance isn't the only thing that changed, as she shows Makoto the demi-plane she has control over. It can be accessed through mist gates that she can open, but as they enter the plane, they find a lush and fertile field, which Shin is shocked to see. The plane used to just be a dark and empty abyss, but Makoto's influence must have changed it, even having fruits that he recognizes from Earth. To be sure of the scale of this place, Makoto uses his new Kai ability to scan the demi-plane, realizing that the place is absolutely huge, but gets cut off at the end of the mist wall. If the demi-plane is a place where Shin has complete control, Makoto thinks that it probably means the goddess can't interfere with his life there, so he thinks about building his city inside. As he thinks about settlements, Makoto remembers that the reason he came to the mountain in the first place was to deal with Shin taking orcs as sacrifices, but in reality, she had nothing to do with that. Since it was all just a misunderstanding, Makoto wants to head back to explain things, so as they exit, they run into Emma, who came to convince him not to fight Shin. But she's shocked when she learns that the girl standing behind him is the Great Dragon. A party is held in celebration of Makoto's victory, which revealed the truth behind the sacrifices, and Emma thanks him from the bottom of her heart for saving their village. The village elder wants to repay him in some way, so Shin makes a suggestion that the orcs move into her demi-plane, and by the next day, all the orcs have packed up their stuff ready to move. Makoto is hesitant to just have them change their residence overnight, but the orcs are determined to repay him for the kindness he has shown them by swearing their undying loyalty to him, and Shin has already made sure the plane is completely safe to live in. In the event something dangerous were to happen, Shin reveals a mini version of herself, who will be there to take care of them. So Makoto agrees to let them move in, and construction on the new town begins. While the orcs are busy with that, Makoto spends his time practicing his magic, while Shin has her fill of his memories of historical dramas, but he starts getting annoyed by her constantly digging through his memories. Shin admits that it's inconvenient for him to have to sit still while she watches his memories, so she says she will figure out a way to build a television to play them instead. While she's gone, Makoto sees some of the memories Shin left open and starts to miss his family, but since his parents were apparently originally from this world, he thinks he might be able to find some information about what their life was like in this world. Meanwhile, in a nearby forest, a dwarf is running for his life as he's chased down by a giant spider monster. Makoto walks around the demi-plane and runs into some of the orcs who seem to be having trouble with a huge tree. They want to cut it down so they can build Makoto a house befitting the lord of the land, but it is too hard for them to cut through with their axes. Makoto is happy to lend a hand and uses his Kai to strengthen himself, allowing him to cut through the tree and pick it up with ease. He's also able to heal wounds without having to expend any mana at all, so he's greatly appreciative to Tsukuyomi for granting him such a powerful skill. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like he can heal his own wounds, but he thinks it won't be an issue as long as he doesn't get hurt. Moments later, Shin returns to the demi-plane with the dwarf after finding him wounded in the forest. She ran into an old enemy of hers while she was out, and after smelling the blood from Makoto's injured hand, it breaks its way into the demi-plane to attack. But Shin decides to stay out of it and let Makoto handle it instead. It's a spider monster plagued with the curse of unending hunger, so it will eat literally anything it can get its legs on. Since it's a spider, Makoto starts his attack with the fire element to sever one of its legs, but its regeneration is powerful enough that it recovers almost instantly and continues attacking. Makoto is able to damage it, but if it keeps healing itself, he thinks the fight will never end. He continues launching fire spears, but he ends up getting caught off guard and stabbed through the gut by the spider's leg, but it just makes him angrier. He unleashes his full power and begins firing repeated fire blasts with no delay in between, following it up with an insanely destructive water arrow. After his display of power, he passes out from exhaustion, but the spider is still able to regenerate and it grabs him once more. However, it seems to have taken a liking to him after he gave her such a fulfilling battle, and Shin suggests that she become one of Makoto's servants as well by forming a contract with him, so by the time Makoto wakes up, there's another girl by his side. Makoto wonders who she is, so she explains that she's the spider that he just fought with. She now assumes a human form because of the contract established with Makoto while he was unconscious. Makoto is shocked by this because he didn't think it was possible to form a contract without the consent of both parties. Shin walks in, and Makoto immediately confronts her on forming a contract for him without his consent, but she replies saying that it was better than a giant spider following him the entire time. The dwarf they saved introduces himself as Biren. He thanks Makoto for driving away the spider that has terrorized his village for such a long time, and he also requests that he and his people permanently live in Shin's demi-plane. Makoto almost immediately agrees to this, but Shin steps in and states that Biren and his people can move in, but in return, they would have to satisfy a few conditions of theirs, like providing them with weapons, and also acknowledging Makoto as the lord of the land. Biren isn't sure, but she gives him 2 of her dragon scales to help convince his people. The next day, Makoto walks around, trying to trace his parents' path and find human settlements, but Shin then appears and informs him that there is a serious matter which requires his immediate attention. He's back at the hut, where Shin states that she and the Spider Girl need new names because the citizens of the demi-plane didn't know what to call them. Makoto gets upset because he was called back for something so trivial, but Shin and the Spider Girl still insist on the new names, so Makoto gives Shin the name Tomo, which was the name of the strongest female samurai, and the Spider Girl is given the name Mio. The next day, a gathering of all citizens of the demi-plane has been arranged, and Makoto is surprised at all the new species which have populated the area. Tomo and Mio introduce themselves with their new names, and also mentions that Makoto should be addressed as either their master or lord. Makoto thinks it's ridiculous, but Tomo and Mio insist, so he ends up settling on being called the young master. Biren introduces Makoto to his village chief named Eld, but he mentions how Makoto has the looks far from that of a typical human. He then asks him if he was given a mission by the goddess, but Makoto is offended by this question and states that he would never accept a mission from her, especially after she roasted him and dropped him on the edge of the world. Eld is relieved to hear this, because the opinions of his people often differ from that of the goddess. Tomo steps in and introduces a species known as the Mist Lizards, who are her loyal followers equipped with both air and water attributes. Mio then introduces her own loyal followers to Makoto, known as the Alki, whose long-term hunger has now been satisfied ever since they received some of Makoto's blood and mana. Makoto gives a brief speech to the citizens and immediately heads out in search of the village he had spotted earlier. He walks for a while and observes a human girl, but she's immediately frightened and runs away the moment she sees him. He continues towards the village, wondering why she ran away, and he's greeted by a horde of villagers, who all point their weapons at him. The people of the village speak in a language which Makoto doesn't understand, and they start to attack him, so he gets driven away. He then realizes that he couldn't understand the language because the goddess gave him the ability to speak every language besides human. Makoto goes back to the hut, upset that he couldn't understand the other humans. He reasons that people wouldn't just go around attacking others just because they can't communicate, so he assumes that he was attacked because he's ugly. But Tomo tells him it's actually because of the large amount of mana he exudes, mentioning that they would have seen him as several demon kings. Emma mentions that an easy fix for this is for Makoto to suppress his mana by imagining a lid on it, so he tries doing this, but there is only a slight decrease in mana. Makoto refuses to give up, so he vows to learn the common speech and also figure out how to suppress his mana. A magic expert named Rugu brings him a ring that can suppress his mana, but when he puts it on, it's immediately overloaded and destroyed. Makoto practices his common speech with Mio, but doesn't seem to be getting the hang of it, but he realizes that he can use his magic to write out a translation of whatever he thinks into common speech. Rugu arrives with a new magic ring, and it successfully absorbs Makoto's mana this time, but Rugu warns him that the ring changes colors from white to red when it reaches its capacity. Makoto returns to the village in a carriage, while also dressed in a cloak and mask, with the alias of being a wealthy merchant's son, and he's able to get through. He notices that everyone in the village is good looking, which makes him upset since he's the only ugly person. They arrive at the Adventurers Guild, where they are greeted by the receptionist, but she finds Makoto's appearance suspicious, so Mio and Tomo state that he's being forced to wear that mask and also can't speak because of a curse. The receptionist explains that each adventurer starts at rank E, and they can rank up by completing quests. Mio and Tomo are given measuring scrolls to determine their level, and everyone is shocked to see that Tomo is level 1320, while Mio is level 1500. But Tomo is upset that Mio is higher level than her, and she demands that they are re-evaluated. Meanwhile, Makoto's level is evaluated, and he's embarrassed to see that he's still at level 1. They ask for a room for the night, so the innkeeper tells them it will cost 6 gold coins. They find the price absurd, so after a little intimidation from Tomo, the receptionist agrees to only charge them 2 gold. Later that night, Makoto and Mio take a walk through the village, when they suddenly bump into a girl who appears to be in distress. Makoto thinks it's suspicious that she's alone at such a late hour, so he tells Mio to handle it, but Mio suddenly scolds her, telling her to get out of their way. Makoto smacks her and reprimands her for being so harsh, and he asks the girl what she's doing all alone. The girl bursts into tears and embraces Makoto, while mentioning that she needs help, so Makoto decides to take her back to the inn, but we see a man watching them. The girl introduces herself as Rin, and mentions how her sister Toa has been missing for over a month. Meanwhile, Tomo encounters some men who are about to raid their carriage, so she starts fighting them. She finds their attack slow, and blows one away even though she's trying to hold back. She attacks with her sword, but it's way too sharp, and she accidentally cuts both of them in half. The remaining man tries to run, but Tomo dashes in front of him and knocks him out. She brings him back to the inn, and Makoto gets angry at her for slaughtering the men. He removes the bandit's chest piece, and finds that it's actually a woman, yelling at Tomo for not checking. Rin walks in on their conversation, and sees Makoto speaking, but it just sounds like gibberish to her, and Makoto is shocked to learn this. He tells Rin to get some food and head to bed, and she thanks him for all his kindness, even calling him her brother. She shows them a sketch of her sister Toa, but the picture seems to surprise Makoto. Rin wishes him good night, but we see her feeling conflicted outside. Makoto examines the memories of the woman Tomo captured, and finds that she's one of the thieves from the Adventurers Guild, and somehow has a connection with Rin. He also mentions that Toa is being held by these thieves, so he tells Tomo and Mio to rescue her. Mio thinks there's no rush, but Makoto has a serious look, so they both leave immediately, and we learn that it's because Toa looks just like his junior from his old world. Mio and Tomo talk about how Makoto's attitude changed right after seeing the picture. Mio wonders if he knows Rin's sister, but Tomo doesn't think it's possible since he doesn't know anyone else in this world, mentioning how she's seen his memories. Mio gets jealous hearing this, wanting to know more about Makoto, but Tomo tells her to get to know him herself. Mio gets scared thinking about his look, so they think they better save the girl as soon as possible. Makoto and Rin head to the trading exchange, and Makoto tells her not to worry, because he sent Tomo and Mio to rescue her sister. In a flashback, we learn that they fell into debt while trying to become adventurers, but her sister failed to pay it off, telling Rin to run away, but she also ends up getting caught. We see Toa as she loses hope, but Tomo and Mio appear, and Mio heals her with her magic. They prepare to head back, and find the door locked, but Mio dissolves it with her magic. They are about to leave, but a man named Melis stops them, and Toa recognizes him as Zetsuya's strongest adventurer. Meanwhile, Makoto is amazed that he sold his demi-plane fruit for 500 gold, and Rin starts wondering about his identity. They return to the inn, but Rin notices a man and runs off, so Makoto uses his investigative kai, and sees her meeting with the adventurers. She reports how Makoto sold some strange fruit for 500 gold, and the leader tells her to steal it, saying it would be enough to pay off their debt. She doesn't want to do it, but thinks of her sister and ends up agreeing. Meanwhile, Melis wonders how Toa is able to move, and we learn he's the boss of the group. Tomo is recognized as having recorded a level over 1000, but the men think it's too high, so they must have faked their level, but Melis invites them to join his group, saying he can make them rich. Tomo and Mio both decline, so Melis roasts them for following Makoto since he's only level 1. This pisses them both off, so they swing at him, but he blocks it with his barrier, and Toa recognizes it as the clay Aegis, so she thinks they have no chance of winning. Meanwhile, Rin thinks about what she should do, because she doesn't want to steal from Makoto. The receptionist tells her to move along, but Makoto appears and mentions she's his friend. The man remembers their previous encounter, so he instantly apologizes. Rin cries hearing that he sees her as a friend, and Makoto is determined to protect her. Melis sends his men to attack, but Tomo smashes through the barrier and blows him away. She continues to beat up the men, even throwing them through the walls of the other cells. Mio beats Melis to vent her frustration, and they end up destroying the whole building. Toa wonders if she's dreaming, but Melis sneaks up on her and holds her hostage, but he just ends up getting sent flying. Tomo wonders if they overdid it, but Mio thinks they deserved it for insulting their master. However, they start arguing over who did more work, so Tomo decides to show off her swordsmanship, slashing through the town. Mio refuses to lose, so she also shows off, and they both continue to cause destruction in the town. They return to the inn, and the sisters are finally reunited. They meet Makoto, and Toa thanks them for saving her, while Makoto realizes she's identical to Nikumi besides her hair color. The girls are exhausted and fall asleep, and Tomo thinks it all turned out well, but Makoto asks for some of Mio's silk, and he suddenly ties them both up. He thanks them for saving Toa, but points out all the damage they caused, so he launches them away to let them reflect on their actions. After the chaos of destroying the village, the group flees toward the nearby town of Sage, joined by the other adventurers who were also captured by Melis. While traveling, they stop at a guild, informing the receptionist that Zetsuya was destroyed by monsters, but luckily, all the residents escaped, and we learn that Tomo used her abilities to erase everyone's memories except for Toa and Ren. The receptionist asks them if the monsters are still there, but they mention that Mio and Tomo took care of it since their level is over 1,000, but she doesn't believe them because no one has such a high level, and we learn that since Zetsuya was destroyed before news of their registration could spread, they need to register again. Makoto thinks that the jealousy between Tomo and Mio might cause further trouble and lead to destruction in Sage, so he shares the story of a samurai who went alone on a journey to gain strength, and this story convinces Tomo that she must also do the same to improve her level, so she asks for his permission to go train in the wilderness. After Tomo leaves, Mio hopes to have all of her master's attention, but Toa's presence poses a threat. As the group continues its journey to Sage, Makoto senses the presence of killer bees using his kai. He tells Mio to handle it, so she uses her wind blade to slice them up, which impresses everyone. Makoto tells them to keep moving, but Toa insists on extracting rare items from the monsters. Makoto struggles to look her in the eye, but when she starts cutting up the bodies, he feels disgusted and loses interest. They continue fighting monsters along the way, and Makoto names his group the Kuzunoha Trading Company. As they continue traveling, they encounter rare monsters called the Ruby Eyes. Makoto tells Mio to deal with it, but the adventurers ask her not to damage the valuable parts of the bees, so she gets frustrated and tells Makoto to do it himself. With no other choice, Makoto takes up his bow and arrow and targets the weak spot of the Ruby Eyes, taking them all out in an instant. The group admires his remarkable skills, but their attention quickly shifts to collecting the loot, and they manage to collect 12 Ruby Eyes before reaching Sage. When they visit the Adventurers Guild, Toa thanks Makoto since she leveled up during their journey, but he feels sad since he's still at level 1 despite killing so many bees. He comes across an S-rank quest, where a trading company is looking for the Ruby Eyes, and since the group had already collected them, he thinks it's easy money and accepts the job. They divide the loot from their hunt, where Makoto only keeps the Ruby Eyes and a few of the other valuable materials, leaving the rest for the others. They all bid each other farewell, but he suggests celebrating before they part ways. They also share their contacts through their license cards, which also have the function of making calls and accessing information. At the dinner, the group bonds and learns more about each other. The adventurers introduce themselves. There's Louisa the gunner, Hazel the alchemy meister, and Nina the priest knight. Nina then challenges Makoto to an arm wrestling match, but she's no match for him, and he easily defeats her. Toa warns him about the quest, because there are various rumors of bad things happening to those that work with the Rembrandt Trading Company. This makes him cautious, and he secretly inspects the ruby eyes before taking them to his room. Since Mio is sharing the room with him, she hopes they'll get intimate, and to increase her odds, she even considers destroying one of the beds, but he has no interest and goes straight to sleep. The next day, Makoto can now create gates, and everyone returns to the demi-plane, where he meets Tomo's clone and reunites with Emma, who acts as his secretary. She informs him that every species in the demi-plane is settling in and performing their duties, also mentioning that they're constructing a giant castle for him, just like the one from his memories. We learn that Tomo hasn't made any contact with the group since she left for her training. As Makoto wonders how she's going, the dwarf chief rushes to take him to their workshop. He proudly presents several sets of armor they crafted, but he refuses to wear them since he's an archer, and not a knight who needs armor. The dwarves are heartbroken and start crying, but he notices a coat that suits his style, and learns it was also created by Rugu. Rugu tells him it will also absorb his mana, saying it will probably kill him instantly, but Makoto puts it on anyway, and he's completely fine. Rugu explains that the coat can change colors, switching between defense and mobility, but it soon fails to absorb all of Makoto's mana and gets torn. Makoto asks if he can make it more durable, and Rugu promises to make one that will be able to kill him instantly, so Makoto worries about his motivation. On the other hand, the Alki have transformed into humans using magic, and they primarily focus on collecting ingredients, since they can even consume the most poisonous items without any side effects. The following day, Makoto takes the ruby eyes and heads to the Rembrandt Trading Company, where he's warmly welcomed by the company's president Patrick and his butler Morris. Meanwhile, an adventurer named Lime visits the guild to learn the identity of the one who took the job of finding ruby eyes, so the receptionist tells him about Makoto. Makoto tells Patrick that due to a curse, he can't speak, so he communicates using his bubbles. He then introduces himself as a level 1 E-class adventurer, but the mere mention of this disappoints Patrick, thinking Makoto is just another overconfident rookie dreaming of success. But Makoto pulls out the ruby eyes, and this shocks him. He quickly confirms their authenticity, and asks for forgiveness for his rudeness. Makoto asks him why he needs these eyes, so he reveals that he needs them to create a magical medicine called ambrosia, to cure his wife and daughters, who were afflicted with a level 8 curse. Makoto sympathizes with him, and tells him he knows an alchemy meister who can help them create the medicine, but Patrick mentions that they still need more rubies to create the antidote, but Makoto cuts him off and gives him all the ruby eyes that he has, and Patrick and his servants are overwhelmed with joy. Patrick officially gives him the job receipt, and wishes him luck with his registration exam at the Merchant Guild, but hearing this shocks him, because he was unaware of any test. Makoto soon reaches the Merchant Guild, where the receptionist tells him about the written exam, and if he passes it, he will then need to complete the practical material gathering test, adding that if he fails, he will need to wait 6 months before he can apply again. To prepare for the written test, he buys an expensive book to study, but upon looking at the contents, he immediately regrets his decision. The receptionist thinks he must find it challenging, saying the test is almost impossible to pass, but Makoto instantly asks to take the test, since it's just grade school maths. He breezes through the written test in just 5 minutes, and the examiner is shocked to see his near-perfect score, while Makoto wonders about the state of education in this world. In the next part of the exam, the examiner instructs him to randomly choose the item he must obtain. As he makes the selection, the examiner boasts that the items that he needs to find are super rare, and he must bring something that's of equal or greater value within the next 3 days to pass the exam, but Makoto thinks that the items he collected with the adventurers are rare, so he takes them out as a substitute, shocking the examiner. On the other hand, Tomo proves her strength as she defeats a massive crab monster and shares a feast with her companions. However, a demi-human brings a message from Emma that Mio has entered the memory vault, so she gets jealous and rushes back. As she returns, Tomo asks if Mio has gone through Makoto's memories, but Emma assures her that she's only translating them. Tomo asks if anything happened between her and Makoto while she was away, but Mio just changes the topic. Later at a restaurant, Makoto struggles to order anything due to the language barrier. He unexpectedly orders what appears to be a lemonade, but when it's served, it's not what he expected, and he longs for a real meal. We see Lime spying on him, and the people there discuss the defeat of the killer bees and giant crab monster. After his unpleasant experience trying new food, Makoto returns to the demi-plane to enjoy his fruits, but he learns from Tomo's clone that production has decreased due to erratic weather patterns. Makoto talks about his dream of creating an illusory city, explaining that it would be a city that people would only find if they got lost in the mist. The people would be given rare foods and items, which would increase their reputation and value in the outside world. But he suddenly receives a telepathic call, alerting him that Mio is in danger. He asks a human alky about the situation, who informs him that while translating memories, Mio came across something she wanted to watch, but Tomo is stopping her. Makoto intervenes, and asks Tomo what's going on. We learn that Mio saw Makoto's memories of an anime and instantly became a fan, so they are fighting about whether anime or historical dramas are better. After their pleading, Makoto allows them to continue watching, but tells them not to fight over it again. At night, Makoto plans to rest in his room, but when he notices that there are only 2 beds for the 3 of them, he asks the 2 to give him one of the beds, but they tell him to pick one of them to share the bed with. He refuses to choose, so he ends up sleeping in a chair instead. The next morning, Makoto discusses creating a medicine with Hazel, but as they prepare to head out, Lime watches them from a distance, telling his friends to launch an all-out attack on them. Makoto and Hazel visit the Rembrandt Trading Company, but it makes Hazel uneasy because the company is well known in the city, and he fears upsetting them. Morris takes them to the lab, where Hazel starts reading the recipe, and is surprised by how easy it is to make, but he's told that extracting fluid from ruby eyes is the only difficult part. He starts gathering magic, but Makoto gets irritated by how much the goddess is being mentioned in his incantation. He also finds Hazel's method inefficient, so he secretly interferes and helps him out. Hazel asks Morris if they're using a replacement method, and he says it's because the ambrosia flower in the original recipe is rare, so they're using the ruby eyes instead, because the bees feed on the flower, but this gives Makoto the idea of making the flowers his company's specialty if he can get his hands on them. Hazel soon creates a bottle of the ambrosia, which Morris takes to Patrick, and while he's gone, they make 2 more potions, but when he comes back and slams the door, it causes Hazel to drop the potion he's holding, but Makoto manages to catch it before it hits the ground. Morris takes them to Patrick, who's injured because he tried to feed the ambrosia to his wife, but got attacked by her, and it took several guards to stop her. He says that this spasm was nothing like before, but Hazel thinks it wasn't a spasm, and something was added to the curse to stop her from taking the medicine, which is possible with level 8 and above curses. Patrick talks about his wife, saying how she only had a mild fever, but she never recovered, and eventually lost her sanity. He starts crying because he thought the curse would end today, and Makoto asks to be taken to her room. He mentions that he'll restrain her to make sure she takes the medicine, but Patrick thinks it'll be impossible for him since he's so low level. But Hazel assures him that he'll be alright, since Makoto is the one who killed the ruby eyes, and Morris also shows confidence in his abilities. Makoto uses the scent of the ambrosia to draw her out, and then uses the judo moves his sister taught him to hold her in place, while Patrick makes her drink the medicine, and starts crying when she is cured. They also feed the cure to both the girls, and he thanks Makoto and the goddess, but Makoto isn't happy he's thanking the goddess. Makoto leaves Hazel behind to refine the potion, and he finds Mio and Tomo waiting for him outside, but they are suddenly attacked by a group, and he dodges their attacks, but they take them head-on, because they want to check their opponent's strength. Their attacks have no effect, and Lime tells Tomo and Mio to join them. Tomo rejects his offer, but Mio wonders how much he's willing to pay. Lime offers her 10 gold, so she decides not to participate in the fight, which makes Tomo angry at her for betraying them, but she's just pretending to be on their side, because Makoto doesn't want them to repeat the same mistake as they made in Zetsuya. Makoto asks Tomo to take care of them, and she easily defeats them. Lime begs them to show mercy, and she spares him because she sees something in his memories. He apologizes for putting a sleeping curse on Patrick's family, which surprises Makoto, because the curse was a fatal one. Makoto asks him why he did this, and he says that a few months ago, he met a man who told him that the adventurers marked by the Rembrandt Company had difficulty finding work. The man suggested putting a sleeping curse on Patrick's family so he would rethink his ways, and Lime says that the man assured him the curse wouldn't harm anyone. Tomo reads his mind to see if he's telling the truth, and she sees he isn't lying, so they decide to let him go, but before he can leave, Mio takes all his gold since she stayed out of the fight. A few days later, Lime apologizes to Patrick, who accepts his apology, but tells him that he'll restrict what he can do as an adventurer, but Lime says he no longer wants to be an adventurer. We see him watching the orphanage where he grew up, when Tomo arrives and gives him a sword, which Makoto sent for him since he broke his old blade. He tells her that it was only because he heard someone from the orphanage died due to the Rembrandt Company that he fell into the man's scheme and placed the curse. She asks him to become her spy, and in return, she'll protect him and the orphanage, so he accepts her offer. Tomo then spies on Patrick, talking with Morris about how it would be bad for them if Makoto opens his own company, which makes her suspicious of them. They return to the demiplane, and Emma tells them there's a problem regarding the three of them. She tells them that the warriors in the demiplane have started to lose confidence in their training, because they keep getting defeated by the three of them. Mio thinks that they shouldn't fight them for a while, but Tomo is against this idea, since it'll make everyone think that they've been abandoned. Makoto wants to check up on everyone, so he tells Tomo to meet with the lizard men, and asks Mio to go with him to check on the Alki. They go with Emma, and overhear the orcs talking about their upcoming training, and how it's depressing to fight Makoto, since Tomo and Mio let themselves get hit, but they can't even get close to Makoto. On their way, they meet Tomo, who tells them that the lizardmen's situation is similar to the orcs. Makoto notes that the different races aren't exchanging information with each other, and Emma mentions that everyone prefers to keep their combat techniques hidden from the other races, but he thinks that it'll be interesting to see them trying each other's styles. So they gather all the lizard men and orcs, and tell them they're doing a special training to see how powerful they are. Both sides send their most powerful warrior and the match begins. The fighters destroy the ring, which impresses Makoto, but he keeps a straight face because it's what Tomo asked him to do. The match ends with the orcs' victory, but Tomo isn't impressed and calls them both weaklings. She asks one of the orcs why they're weak, and he says that even though they seem weak to her, the match was incredible for them, but she says that they've yet to reach the level of strength that is expected of them. Makoto asks her not to go too hard on them, but she ignores him and says that they're expected to be strong enough so they can be relied upon. Since they can't measure their strength correctly by fighting the three of them, they will gather every week to fight against each other. Their strength will be measured, and they'll be given a ranking, saying it also applies to the dwarves and alkies. Everyone is concerned that their fighting techniques will be exposed, but Tomo says that since they're so weak, they shouldn't worry about this. They'll prove their strength by winning in these matches, and the ones at the top of the ranking will be known as great warriors, and those who fail to show any results should find other work, because there are more ways to contribute than just being a warrior. Tomo's clone invites Makoto to say a few words, but he's too nervous, so he just agrees with Tomo, saying they don't have anything worth concealing, but he knows they can get stronger, so they should help each other improve. While he's thinking about what to name this new ranking system, Tomo tells everyone to get ready for the dimension ranking, but Makoto isn't sure about the name. Upon retesting their levels, Mio is at level 1500, while Tomo is now at level 1340, which Makoto thinks is impressive since she increased her level by 20, while he is still stuck at 1. But Tomo isn't happy, because she expected a better result from her training. The receptionist mentions that the guild is short-handed, because most of their top members have left or are injured, so he's requested to train other adventurers, and Makoto says he knows a group of adventurers that can help. Makoto asks Tomo to train Toa and the others, so she thinks about looking for a place to train near the guild, but she remembers how Makoto reacted when he saw Toa, making her think that she must resemble someone from his previous life. She doesn't want anything to affect her time with him, so she thinks she needs to quickly make them strong enough and independent of Makoto. The training starts, and the group goes to fight a swarm of Shadowtails, but Tomo has to step in and save them, after which she yells at them for their poor strategy. She decides to teach them basic tactics, so she tells Hazel to make a trap using water and earth magic, and tells Louisa to find a place with a clear view. She tells Hazel to add poison to the mud, and then lets them continue the fight. The monkeys step into the trap and can't move, giving Louisa a clear target to aim at, and the ones who survive are defeated by Nina, who hits them head-on, and Toa, who uses her thief skills to conceal herself and attack from behind. She tells Hazel that by using this strategy, he can use offensive magic freely, because he doesn't have to heal anyone except Nina, so they defeat all of their enemies following her strategy. After their successful mission, she tells them they'll find another nest on their own, because even if their level isn't high, they should continue challenging their limits and prove they're the best. Tomo returns to the guild, and informs the receptionist that she's assigned the job of defeating the Shadowtail nests to Toa and her team. The receptionist is shocked, because she doubts they're strong enough for the task, but she's surprised when the group shows up with the tails of 2 monkey lords, proving that they cleared 2 nests. On the other hand, Makoto tells Mio to go to the Tinnarak forest and find the ambrosia flower, because he wants it to become their signature product. He goes to see Patrick and requests to rent one of their stores, but Patrick wonders why he doesn't want to buy his own shop. We see Makoto learn from the Merchant Guild's receptionist that if someone buys their own shop, the government will ask them to spy for them if they're in the Ion Kingdom. Patrick tells him there's a neutral city that isn't tied to any country, and he thinks it would be perfect for him to start his store. He even knows someone in that city, so he asks Makoto to wait until he can contact him. Meanwhile, Mio reaches the Tinnarak forest, but she doesn't like it because there seems to be nothing tasty there. A human party also enters the forest, and they are watched by 2 elves, who don't seem happy about them trespassing. The party is soon defeated, and one of the elves named Aqua tells her partner Eris that their enemies are alive, but she wouldn't have hesitated to kill them if they'd laid their hands on the Crimson Lotus. A party is held to celebrate Makoto's new company, and he thanks everyone. He's a little shy, so he asks Tomo to speak with everyone since it's her specialty, but she tells him that everyone wants to hear his voice. Tomo's clone brings him a drink, and he pats her head, which makes Tomo happy because they're connected. Mio gets jealous and brings out a dish, which she had discovered inside. She thinks she should feed it to him, but he eats it himself, making her sad. Tomo takes Mio away from Makoto, because she wants everyone to spend time with him. The Aoki Akina approaches him, and mentions that she can now maintain her human form for a longer time. She also gives him a report of their journey to the Tinnarak forest, and reveals the location of the ambrosia flower. She wanted to bring him a sample, but couldn't because the forest is ruled by another race. Makoto wonders if all the Aokis have gotten used to living in the demi-plane, and she tells him that they've adjusted well, all thanks to him. The lizard man Liddy also appears before Makoto to thank him, because he learned new techniques in their joint training. He reveals that he's even getting trained in unarmed combat by Tomo, but this worries Makoto, because he doesn't want everyone to become like her. Biren wonders if he likes staying inside, and he says that it's a good place to live, but sometimes Mio and Tomo cause problems. He wonders if Biren and the others are becoming bored since they never leave the demi-plane, but Biren considers the place a paradise, and says they don't need anything else. He's happy to craft weapons for everyone, but is also interested in the weapons of the outside world, so Makoto allows him to work in their new shop at Sige. Later on, an orc tells him that he's the new guide for the adventurers in Mirage City, a fake town created to trade goods that exist only in the demi-plane with the outside world. Makoto thanks him for his services, and he's glad to be useful. The whole crowd starts shouting, and they all want to talk with him. Mio complains to Tomo that she wanted to be the one to give the report about the ambrosia flower and the people guarding it, but Tomo tells her they should wait until they're sure. Suddenly, they stop sensing Makoto's presence, which makes them worried. His presence returns, and quickly they rush to his location, where they find him practicing archery. Mio hugs him while crying, and he wonders what happened. Tomo wonders how he practices his archery, and he tells her that he focuses on the target by emptying his mind, so she realizes that he's making his consciousness vanish and reappear to shoot his targets. Mio notes that a person can only do this if they're dead, so when he was practicing, it felt like he'd died. Makoto assures them he's fine and they don't need to worry, but Tomo tells him that his mana capacity is increasing. She notes that a person's mana is normally fixed and can't be increased, but by experiencing death and rebirth, his mana has increased and is now comparable to that of the goddess. The demi-plane has also expanded, and if the goddess finds out about this, she won't be happy, so they must suppress his mana. The next day, Makoto buys supplies for his store, but he's mentally exhausted since he can't practice archery, and because Mio keeps making moves on him. He's lost in thoughts when a bag belonging to a demi-human comes flying towards him. He returns it to its owner, and sees the demi-human's face, which makes him realize that he looks similar to them. A girl starts hitting on Makoto, making him notice he's in a red light district, but before things go too far, he's taken away by Tomo and Mio. They get angry at him and wonder if they aren't good enough for him. He considers them his family, but is embarrassed to say this, and instead tells them that they have nothing to do with what he was doing. This makes them furious, and they tear apart his clothes, but before they can do anything, he runs away by creating a mist gate. Emma sees Makoto hanging on a tree, and from the pink mist and spider webs, she understands the situation. She tells him that his protective gear is ready, so he goes to Rugu. He tries his new gear and is pleased with it, but suddenly Mio arrives and apologizes for the previous night. He says it's alright, but tells her not to do it again. He asks her about the race guarding the ambrosia flowers, and she tells him to leave that to her, but he gets scared of what she'll do, and decides to go with her. They soon reach the Tinnarak forest, and because they sense someone following them, they decide to get out of their sight. They find the ambrosia flowers, and Makoto feels someone must be taking care of them because of how great they look. He gets a flashback, where we see him holding his sister's hand, so he asks Mio to hold his hand, since the ground is slippery. She gets happy by this, but they're interrupted by Aqua and Eris, which makes Mio mad. The humans also arrive and get ready to steal the flowers, making the forest guardians think they're all thieves. Eris attacks using ice magic, and the human girl asks Makoto why he isn't fighting back, as he realizes she's the same girl from the night before. Makoto easily deflects Eris's attack, so she attacks with her flaming arrows, but he blocks them with his defensive Kai. He thinks he can get the situation under control, but notices Mio getting angrier, preparing to kill everyone. Tomo telepathically communicates with Makoto, and he asks for her help, but she refuses because he went along with Mio, and also held her hand. So to make her help him, he allows her to make a katana and cultivate rice. She tells him to distract the adventurers so she can open a mist gate and transfer them to the Mirage City, and to calm Mio, he should feed her favorite food. Makoto pushes the adventurers into the mist gate, and then gives his blood to Mio, bringing her back to normal. She uses her dark magic to absorb the mana of the elves and stop their attacks. Makoto tells her to tie them up in case they attack again, and he explains that he didn't come to steal the flowers, saying he just wants to talk, so they take them to their village, while Makoto realizes that a familiar magic barrier has been set up around the village to hide its presence. They're greeted by the elders and their representative Nil, who calls himself a forest ogre, surprising Mio because she thought they were elves. Nil's son Adano arrives to greet Makoto, and mentions that they aren't different from elves, even if they change their names. The elders say that elves need the forest to survive, whereas the forest ogres protect the forest, but Adano wonders how long they plan to live in hiding, because the dragon's barrier is constantly getting weaker. Makoto mentions he's just a merchant looking for medicinal ingredients, but Adano is suspicious of how strong he is, so the elders continue to question him. Afterwards, Aqua and Eris apologize to Makoto, and ask him to meet their master Mundo, who arrives by breaking the wall. He shakes Makoto's hand, but seeing him hold his hand for longer than she ever could, Mio gets angry and sends him flying. Makoto tells Mio he wants her to spy on Adano and Mundo, which excites her because she has seen spies in his memories. After gathering the information, she reports to Makoto that Mundo is possessed by something, whereas Adano is in contact with the demons, so he tells her to go back to the demi-plane and swap with Tomo, because there's something he wants to confirm with her. The elves throw a feast for him, but he sees Mundo and Adano arguing. Suddenly, a skeleton monster appears from Mundo's body and kills Adano, so Makoto confronts him. He notes that he just sucked the life force out of Mundo's body and that he's still alive, but he had to kill Adano because of his connections with a particular woman. Based on his gaming knowledge, Makoto knows that the monster is a lich. The monster tries to attack him, but thanks to Makoto's resistance against status effects, it doesn't work on him. He then uses Mio's dark magic to absorb the lich's mana, completely overwhelming him. Tomo arrives, and transfers the lich through a gate so Makoto can talk to him later. His victory surprises everyone, and they question if he's really a merchant, revealing they had planned to kill him after the feast, which makes him horrified. Tomo talks to Nil, but he fails to recognize her, so she reminds him that he was the one who asked her to set up the mist barrier around their village. She intimidates him, and he suddenly realizes who she is, so he quickly tells everyone to bow to her, but she tells them to instead bow before Makoto since he's her master. They return to interrogate the lich, and Makoto asks him why he was in the village. He says that he wanted to observe the forest ogres and their abilities, but Tomo asks him why he became an undead. He reveals he wants to become a Grant, a species superior to humans in every way, and asks Makoto how he defeated him, so Makoto explains that he used dark magic to consume his mana when he was casting his spell. The lich thinks he's lying because it would require a ridiculous amount of mana, and this angers Mio and Tomo, who threaten to kill him, but Makoto calms them down. He wonders if the lich has any spell books he can buy, and the lich thinks he's messing with him, but Makoto mentions how he only learned magic from a single page written by Emma. Tomo suggests keeping the lich around to help him learn magic, and she mentions how he must want to become a Grant because he knows of other worlds that aren't created by the goddess, and he must believe Grants can travel between worlds. Makoto wonders if he can return to his old world, but Tomo thinks it's impossible, because many have tried to travel between worlds, and only a few have succeeded. She reveals that Grants aren't the ones with the power to travel between worlds, but rather those who have successfully moved worlds. Makoto wonders if there's a way to do it, but according to Tomo, even if the goddess herself opened up a path, the survival rate is less than 10%. She proposes that Makoto form a contract with the lich since he wants to learn magic from him, and they both agree. Makoto is too strong, so he needs to lower his mana in order to form the contract. The ritual is completed, and the lich returns to his human form, thanking Makoto for the opportunity to be his servant, and he's given the name Shiki. Tomo tells him he has a lot to learn, but there's suddenly an explosion, and Tomo collapses, apologizing for her mistake. Makoto tells Mio to stop Tomo's bleeding, and he takes Shiki toward the explosion site. Shiki tries to follow him, but falls to the ground because he isn't familiar with his new body. He decides to save his mana and instead treat the wounded from there, which surprises Makoto, as he wasn't expecting him to have healing magic. Makoto runs toward the explosion site and comes across a few injured people. One of them is an Alki named Hokuto, but he finds this odd because Alkis should be able to heal quickly, and seeing him in this state reminds him of when his cat died in his past life. Shiki starts healing them using his magic, but some of them are too badly hurt, so he asks Makoto for help. But Makoto can't use healing magic and instead uses Kai, which isn't enough, so he combines 2 Kai spells and successfully heals him. He's confused why he senses his mana covering the area, and a girl hands him a necklace, which he remembers belonging to the orc from the party. Makoto reaches the explosion site and finds traces of a mist gate, and he wonders if it's due to the explosion. He notices more gates and senses Tomo's clone as well as the orc and adventurers from the other side of the gate. The gates start closing, and he remembers what Mio told him about a person's consciousness disappearing when they die. There's only one gate left, and he tries to save the adventurer on the other side, but he starts seeing their memories. We learn that the girl he met in the red light district was after him as part of her plan. She and her fellow adventurers stole several items from the Mirage City, but as they were escaping, a young orc saw them, and when the orc and the others tried to stop them, the girl threw one of the bags, but inside it was a ring that had absorbed Makoto's mana, which caused the explosion. Tomo's clone tried to protect everyone using a water wall, but the explosion was so powerful that it broke through the barrier, killing everyone. It created a mist gate, which is how the girl teleported to Saich, where she's still worried about the stolen weapons. Suddenly mist surrounds her, and Makoto appears with a terrifying look. He isn't wearing his mask, so the girl starts insulting him for his looks, but he ignores this and wishes he killed her before. She mentions she's a level 96 hunter, but Makoto ignores this and takes out the traditional weapon of the orcs. She attacks Makoto, who cuts off her hands and knocks her down, telling her she deserves it. She begs him to stay away, but he finds her irritating and finishes her off. Tears start rolling down his eyes, and he wonders if it's because this is the first time he's intentionally killed someone, or because of the deaths caused by the explosion, but he concludes that it's because dying was a sad thing in the world he used to live in. The next day, Makoto holds a traditional orc funeral for the dead and pretends to be fine. He tells Tomo about his experience of seeing the girl's memories, and she feels happy knowing he killed the adventurer as the true king of the demi-plane. He wonders if he's becoming like them because of the contracts, but this makes Tomo laugh, and Shiki explains that no part of the servant can enter the master's body. Tomo believes he could use her power because of their connection, which makes Mio angry, but Tomo clarifies she's talking about the trust between them. Shiki tells him he can use any of his servant's power, but it'll take time to get used to it. Tomo explains that the trust between master and the servant is the key, so when a master faces an emergency, the servant's power may manifest in him. Mio gets jealous because Makoto used Tomo's power, and the girls start fighting over who's closer to him. Later, Makoto tells Emma about creating a wall around the Mirage City to protect the weak and the children, and he also wants the Lizardmen to patrol the area. He tells the Alkies to take turns in pretending to be adventurers, staying in Mirage City so they can gather information. The dwarves go on to brief him on managing the warehouse, where they plan to dispose of the waste immediately and add safety precautions. After meeting the parents of the dead orc, Makoto meets his friend and apologizes, but the orc reminds him that he saved their village, so they all will happily offer their lives for him, but he still feels bad and promises to make things right. Makoto meets Patrick, who tells him about the neutral town of the Rotsgard Academy. He shows Makoto a map, which surprises him because it looks a lot like Japan. Makoto plans to leave immediately, but before going, he reveals he lied and removes his mask. They are shocked to see his face, but Patrick assures him he still trusts him, mentioning how he never stopped loving his family even when they were transformed by the curse, but Makoto is a little offended by the comparison. Mio and Tomo wonder why he's only taking Shiki with him on his trip, but he explains that Shiki will be more helpful because he's a former human researcher, and he also won't destroy any towns. He mentions that he was fine with not understanding the world before, but after the recent incident, he wants to learn more about their world and his parents. He apologizes for leaving, but gifts Tomo his memories of swordsmanship, and Mio his memories of firearms. Tomo tells him that while he's gone, she'll try to get the forest ogres to move to the demi-plane, whereas Mio will maintain Mirage City and their shop inside. Makoto and Shiki get ready to leave, but Makoto suddenly gets teleported somewhere else and is attacked by two adventurers, Sophia and Lancer. He dodges their attack but gets his fingers chopped off. On the other hand, Morris tells Patrick that the main forces from Lemia and Gretonia will soon be fighting the demons. Makoto is confused at what's going on and remembers hearing the goddess's voice before getting teleported. Sophia thinks he's a demi-human, so she wonders if he's really the goddess's hero. She continues to attack, so he uses barriers and his strengthening Kai to protect himself, but it isn't enough to fully block her attacks. His injury is also more serious than he thought, so he uses a bowstring to stop the bleeding. He learns that a war has broken out between humans and demons, and his attackers have chosen to side with the demons. Lancer tells Sophia to dispose of Makoto because he's preventing the demon army from advancing, and Makoto thinks about retreating to the demi-plane, but he knows he'll be followed, so he prepares to fight. He attacks with a rapid-fire barrage, and while his enemies are occupied with defending, he uses his concealing Kai and tries to escape, but crystal walls suddenly appear around him. Makoto uses barriers on his feet to break the walls, but Sophia and Lancer catch up to him. She thinks he isn't good at fighting, but has weird abilities, and Lancer believes he's receiving the goddess's protection. So Sophia puts on a ring that removes his protection, but Makoto tells them he wasn't receiving anything from the goddess in the first place. Makoto learns that Sophia is the famous dragon hunter, and Lancer is actually a dragon. He tells them he's a merchant and doesn't want to fight, but they don't believe him and prepare to attack. Since he has no other choice, he takes off the rings absorbing his mana, and uses his strengthening Kai which blows them away. He switches to his investigative Kai to see them through the dust, and he uses a special arrow made by the dwarves to fire a devastating shot. Sophia and Lancer try to block it, but it splits up into multiple shots and breaks through their defense. Makoto follows up with a water arrow, and Lancer thinks he can block it since he can also use water magic, but is surprised that Makoto's affinity for water magic is greater than him, causing him to freeze. Sophia uses this opportunity to chop off Makoto's head, but he narrowly dodges her attack. She again attacks him with all her strength, but Makoto blocks it with his arrow, and it breaks her sword. He's amazed by the work of the dwarves, but Sophia suddenly grabs him, and Lancer creates crystals in the sky, which he uses to continuously swap with Sophia, taking Makoto high into the air. She returns to the ground, and thinks that Makoto is done for, but he shoots fireballs to destroy the crystals, and fire starts raining from the sky, hitting both the demon and human armies. He uses the power from his mana rings to fire a huge water arrow, and everyone watches as a massive pillar descends. It freezes everyone around as it lands, while Makoto disappears into thin air. As the rings shatter, there's a massive water explosion, and it creates a whole new lake, but we see Sophia and Lancer manage to survive. They think Makoto must have died in the attack, but Sophia swears to kill him if he's still alive. When Makoto wakes up, he notices Tomo and Mio sleeping next to him, and surprisingly, all his injuries are healed. He tells everyone about Sophia and Lancer, and Shiki mentions that the goddess manipulated him to fight the demon army. Mio gets angry, but Makoto believes it's his fault because he got careless, and thinks he must increase the amount of mana he can use at once, so he decides to study at the academy with Shiki. Tomo thinks she and Mio should travel with them, because the goddess can interfere at any time, but he mentions he wants to hide them from her, calling them his trump card. Tomo introduces Makoto to her new clone, which she made using one of his rings, and he names her Como. Tomo mentions how Como won't end up like the previous clone, and this is basically their child, so Mio gets mad hearing this. We see that the forest ogres have also moved into the demi-plane, and Tomo plans to prepare them for the dimensional ranking. Their shop inside is opened, and a customer visits to get his blade repaired. He's unhappy with the demi-human employees, but Biren takes his blade and repairs it. Mio shows off how sharp it is, and it accidentally cuts the customer's cheek, but Eris quickly heals him. Everyone is impressed with their services, and even Patrick is amazed to see Makoto's shop. Makoto learns that during his battle with Sophia and Lancer, he unintentionally hurt both the human and demon armies. He realizes there were other heroes on the battlefield, so he wonders if he will meet them in the future. Later on, as Makoto thinks about his past life, Emma calls him for the feast, which is to celebrate their new shop and for his farewell. He reflects on everything that happened to him, and thinks that living in this world isn't that bad, but he immediately takes back his words when he sees Tomo and Mio fighting once again. On their way to Rothsgard, Makoto and Shiki reach the town of Obit. Makoto mentions that walking is tiring, but Shiki believes it's better than teleporting and getting found by the goddess. He asks Makoto to find something to eat, while he searches for a nice place to stay. Makoto says he's fine staying anywhere, but Shiki can't allow them to stay at a cheap place, because he knows it will upset Mio and Tomo, and Makoto wonders if leaving the demi-plane in their hands was the right decision. Back at the demi-plane, Mio practices cooking so she can impress Makoto, but her friends pass out after eating the food she prepared. Tomo's glad she didn't serve it directly to Makoto, but Mio isn't sure what went wrong, because she made the curry just like in Makoto's memories. Tomo wonders if Mio has ever eaten rice curry, and she tells her that she hasn't, because it's a dish from another world. She didn't even ask Makoto how to make it, because she wanted to surprise him. Emma and Biren wonder if the green part is a mineral ore, and she says it looked delicious in Makoto's memory, but they tell her that the original ingredient was probably a bell pepper. Mio eats the curry, and finds no issue with it, but Tomo tells her most people aren't able to eat minerals like her, and this surprises her. Tomo isn't sure if she studied cooking, but Mio mentions knowing how to use a flame. Tomo asks her to prepare toast to test her, and Mio thinks it's easy, but she uses her flames and burns it completely. On the other hand, Makoto tries blue meat for the first time and is surprised by its texture. The restaurant owner wants him to at least pretend to enjoy the food, but Makoto tells him he liked its taste. He wonders if it's made from slime, which impresses the owner, and he thinks Makoto must be a good adventurer because he easily identified the ingredient. He mentions he's submitted a request to the guild for slime hunting and asks Makoto for help, but he tells him that he's mainly a merchant and is traveling to Rothsgard. This draws everyone's attention, and Makoto realizes he's being watched, so he leaves after paying his bill with a gold coin. Makoto walks around the city and everyone makes fun of his ugliness, which makes him question his decision to take off his mask, but he notes this is still tolerable compared to his first visit to the humans' town. Makoto goes to the guild, where the receptionist can't believe he completed a special mission while being just an E-rank adventurer. He notices the slime hunting quest, but he can't accept it because there's a B-rank requirement. He hears a girl telling the receptionist that the moon over the ruined castle is attacking, which surprises him because it's a song he loved in his previous life. She asks why they aren't helping her, but the receptionist tells her that they're understaffed and can't handle a bandit group with over 100 members. The girl gets emotional and wonders why this is happening to them, even though they offer their prayers to the goddess. A few of the adventurers make fun of her, saying that if prayers worked, there wouldn't be a need for adventurers, but the girl believes the goddess is angry because of people like them. The adventurers start harassing the girl, and she rushes out in tears. Makoto walks in the street and realizes he's being followed. He uses his kai and learns that the adventurers are attacking the girl and her partner, so he decides to help them. He defeats the men following him and sends them flying towards the harassers. One of them takes out his knife to attack Makoto, but he doesn't give him a chance and defeats them easily. He heals her partner using his healing kai, and she wonders if he's helping them because he's a demi-human, but he tells her that despite his ugly appearance, he's a human. He introduces himself, and the girl tells him she's Lana from the Tapa village, and her partner is Ito, a werewolf, which surprises Makoto because he thought werewolves were large and scary. Makoto wonders why she can't wait for the guild to deal with the bandits, and Lana reveals that the bandits tortured their village's strongest fighter Barkley and killed his wife. The villagers want to accept the bandits' request and share their resources, but every village they've robbed so far has been slaughtered. Ito regains consciousness and asks Lana if the guild will help them, but she tells him no and he apologizes for not being strong enough to deal with the bandits. Makoto says he'll escort them to their village, but they mention that it'll take a long time to reach it because it's very far. He tells them it's fine and asks them not to bite their tongue as he grabs them and starts jumping from one tree to the next. They reach the village and Lana tells him to wait while she explains the situation to everyone. After she leaves, Makoto asks Ito if he isn't part of the village, and he's surprised that Makoto can speak their language. Ito reveals that Lana and a few villagers are kind to him, but the others will never allow a demi-human like him to enter their village. Makoto uses his investigative kai and learns that the bandits have hurt several villagers, which impresses Ito, who thinks that Makoto also has a great sense of smell like him. He tells Ito that he knew he was pretending to be unconscious when he was carrying him, thinking he couldn't face Lana after putting her in danger, but he advises him to protect her if he wishes to be with her. Makoto's investigative kai detects something else, and he starts going towards the mountain, but Ito tries to stop him, and he realizes that Ito also knows what's present there. Ito isn't sure why he's doing this, so he mentions not liking the bandits using his favorite song's name. Ito wonders how he can ever repay him, so he tells him that he owns a trading company where several demi-humans work, so if they ever come to their village, they should treat them well. In the demi-plane, more people have fallen victim to Mio's cooking, who still isn't sure what she's doing wrong. Tomo tells her that just using good ingredients won't make the food taste good, because different species have different tastes, and this surprises Mio, who never thought cooking would be this difficult. Tomo thinks Mio should test her cooking on Lime, because he's a human just like Makoto, but this will be painful for Lime, so she suggests Mio to travel the world to improve her cooking. Mio agrees to this idea, which makes everyone happy, since they won't have to eat her cooking anymore. On the other hand, Makoto finds the bandits and decides to wear his mask, because he doesn't want them to figure out his identity. He uses silencing kai, which removes all the sound in their surroundings and causes a panic among the bandits. He uses this opportunity to attack them with arrows, and when they try to counterattack, his armor protects him. He doesn't want to waste his arrows, so he uses a fire arrow to knock out everyone in a single attack. Only one bandit remains, who begs Makoto to spare his life, but he says he isn't going to kill him and asks him to change their group's name. Makoto meets Shiki, who's found a room that costs 3 gold coins, which Makoto finds expensive, but Shiki reveals that the heroes are treated well by the Lemia Kingdom and Gretonia Empire, so he can't allow Makoto to be the only one who's living in poverty. Makoto remembers the heroes from his fight with the demons, and wonders when he'll meet them. We see Makoto in his previous life, where he meets a girl named Hibiki, who wonders how he's in the archery club when he's so average, but she's a little jealous of him because unlike him, she has a boring life, and she always gets what she wants. Suddenly a white light appears and she's teleported to another world, where the goddess asks her to become a hero. She assures Hibiki that she won't be alone against demons, since she'll also send another hero to help her, and she'll get all kinds of powers. The goddess wonders if Hibiki wants a challenging life, which tempts Hibiki, so the goddess gives her magical abilities, increased strength, and charisma. She also gives her a silver sash, and sends her to the Lemia kingdom, where everyone is waiting for her, since the goddess had told them about a hero coming to help them fight the demons. Days pass and Hibiki learns that the demons were forced into the barren lands, but for the past decade, they've been advancing, and the Alicia kingdom has already been defeated, whereas the Lemia and Gritonia kingdoms are still fighting. She knows that Gritonia also has a hero and the two nations are only working together due to a common enemy, but once the war is over, it could become a problem. She calls the wolf spirit hiding in her sash, and thinks about her teammates she'll be recruiting the next day, as we learn that the king has already selected the court mage Woody, and a knight named Verda. The next day, we meet Navel, who's also known as the silver-haired ogre, as she looks at Hibiki, finding her unsuitable for battle, so she decides to leave, but she's stopped by Woody. Hibiki interrupts them and asks Navel to be her teacher, but Navel isn't interested. Hibiki convinces her by saying if she joins their party, she can be on the front line and can kill all the demons, so Navel ends up accepting. Hibiki's group is asked to escort the priestess of Laurel named Chia, but on her way, she's attacked by mana-eating monsters called kobolds. The priestess creates a barrier around her and the group goes to fight the kobolds, but Hibiki has never killed before and she feels nervous. They attack, but Hibiki hesitates to kill the monster, because he begs her to spare him and he uses this opportunity to call his friends. She blames herself for the trouble, but upon seeing her friends struggling, she gathers the courage and starts fighting. The group follows her lead and defeats all the kobolds, so Chia wishes to join their party, but they think it'll cause problems with Laurel. Chia cuts off her hair and asks them to allow her to join them, otherwise, her nation will think they did something to her. Hibiki finds her threat senseless and she just ruined her hair, but Chia thinks it would have disturbed her while fighting. Navel and Hibiki joke about how they should also cut their hair. However, Chia mentions that they're strong and don't need this. But Hibiki finds Chia impressive and wishes to learn magic from her. The newly formed group starts defeating the demons, but when they face Mio in her spider form, they struggle against her. Mio's skin is too strong, and none of their attacks work on her, but Navel keeps attacking and manages to cut off one of her legs, but it regenerates instantly. Navel is about to be eaten, but Hibiki saves her and tells Chia to heal her. They're all defeated by Mio, and only Hibiki remains, who manages to damage one of Mio's eyes, but passes out. She wakes up in her room and is happy that no one died during their battle, but this is her first defeat, so she thanks Mio for the experience, and vows to defeat her the next time they meet. In Makoto's old world, we see a boy named Tomoki, who has a miserable life and wishes to live in another world with superpowers. He goes to sleep, and when he wakes up, he finds the goddess standing before him. She asks for his help, and grants him magic and a strong body, as well as an eye that can charm others, along with flying shoes and the ability to become immortal at night. He isn't happy with his appearance, so she changes it and sends him to Gritonia, where the second princess of the Gritonia Empire, Lily Flaunt, greets him. Lily introduces him to Genebia, a royal guard, and he's surprised, since he's never seen a female knight. She considers him rude, but starts blushing when he stares into her eyes. Lily thinks something is wrong, and takes Tomoki to measure his level. She learns that Tomoki has a magic eye, and she tells the doctor to make sure that the royal family is immune to its effects. Later on, Tomoki is introduced to Yukinatsu, an alchemist, who tells him that she doesn't make medicines, but is skilled in making golems. Tomoki gets excited by this, which charms her and she invites him to her room, but Lily stops her. Tomoki walks around the castle and he finds a dragon summoner named Mora. He gets excited by her dragon and wonders if she lives with her family here. But she says that Lily brought her to the castle after their village was attacked by demons. He apologizes to her, and she says it's fine, but she's also charmed by his eye, and asks him to marry her. At night, Tomoki tells Lily he wants to form a party with the 3 girls, and Lily says they already like him, so it won't be a problem. She thinks he still can't control his magic eye, while Tomoki wonders if everyone likes him just because of his powers. He wants to know what Lily thought of him when they first met, and she thinks he's a great hero, so it's natural that everyone likes him. She kisses him and they spend the night together, as we learn Lily is willing to do anything to defeat the demons. Lily tells Tomoki that Gritonia and Limia are preparing to launch a joint attack on Fort Stella, and he shows interest in meeting the Limia Kingdom's hero. Lily mentions their hero is gorgeous, but he assures her he's happy with her. On the other hand, Navel tells Hibiki about their plans to fight the demons, but Hibiki doesn't look happy, so Navel wonders if she's thinking about Gritonia's hero, and Hibiki tells her that she's interested in him, since they're from the same place and are almost the same age. The 2 nations meet, and Lily reveals they got reinforcements from the King of Ion, but received less support from Laurel, and Hibiki thinks their relationship with Laurel isn't good because of Chia. Lily says that even after this setback, they outnumber the demons, and once they receive the goddess's blessing, their advantage will further increase. Hibiki asks why they're fighting at night, and Tomoki tells her they're used to it, but she mentions that Limia isn't good at fighting in the dark. Tomoki wonders if Limia has anything useful to offer, but he mentions that this fight is like a mid-boss battle, which they should easily win with the goddess's blessing. She wonders if they met in their previous life, and he says no, but when she mentions that a model her friend liked had the same name as him, he gets angry and tells her that they're 2 different people. She apologizes for upsetting him, and he asks what level she's at, so she reveals she's level 430, but Tomoki says he's over 600, which makes her realize that he's trying to one-up her. At night, Navel wonders why Hibiki came to this world, and she explains how she was born into a good family and wanted to experience challenges in her life. Navel can't believe Hibiki is going to war because she couldn't even kill a kobold at first, but Hibiki says that this time she has a friend to watch her back. Tomoki asks for the goddess's blessing as they prepare for battle, whereas a demon commander, Rona, is told they're about to be attacked. The war begins, and Hibiki feels something isn't right because they easily defeat their enemies, so she tells Chia and Woody to put a barrier around them in case they fall into a trap. They reach the fort's gate where Rona activates a magic circle, making everyone fall into a hole, but Tomoki uses his flying shoes to escape, and when Rona attacks him using ice magic, he uses the divine spear to block her attack, and his party also escapes thanks to the replica shoes made by Yukinatsu. He asks Mora to summon her dragon Nagi, which they ride to enter the fort. A demon commander appears to fight them, and Tomoki attacks without hesitation, blowing up the demon's arm, but the demon considers him rude for starting the fight without introducing himself. Tomoki realizes that the demon won't be defeated in a single attack, and Hibiki arrives to help him. She apologizes to the demon for Tomoki's behavior and introduces herself, and the demon tells them that he's Io the demi-giant. He regenerates his arm, which shocks Hibiki, as his regeneration is on par with the black spider. Io removes the goddess's blessing from Tomoki and Hibiki, making them fall to their knees, which makes Tomoki realize that he's no longer immortal at night. He tells everyone to retreat and reminds Hibiki that they're heroes who can't die here, but she decides to stay, and tells him that she won't call someone who only cares for themselves a hero. Io is disappointed that he'll only be fighting Hibiki, but she tells him that she isn't alone, as her party arrives to fight by her side. The goddess is disappointed that the humans weren't successful even after she sent 2 heroes to help them, but she suddenly notices Makoto. Hibiki and the others keep fighting Io and manage to hold until morning, but reality hits Hibiki that she isn't strong enough to defeat him. Rona asks Sophia how things are going, and she tells her that everything is fine, but at that moment they see the goddess's light, and we see how Makoto was summoned. This gives the humans hope and they continue to fight, but they're still on their last legs, so Navel asks Woody to use the magic device, which will allow her to hold back Io while everyone else escapes. He hesitates at first, but decides to use a talisman on her sword and gives her the rose sign. Navel attacks Io and manages to cut him, which surprises Hibiki, so Navel tells her she's using a special catalyst, but Verta notices the rose sign on her neck and realizes what's happening. Navel cuts off one of Io's hands, who's surprised that the people of this world know spells that he's never seen before. Navel is also surprised that they haven't managed to defeat even one demon commander, but Io assures her he's the strongest demon on this battlefield. Navel slashes Io's neck, which impresses him since he didn't think he would have to use his full strength. He activates his second phase, and Navel calls out Woody, who transports everyone else away. Hibiki tells him to stop, but Verta holds her back and reveals that the rose sign gives its users great power in exchange for their lives. Io says he's going after Hibiki since Navel can't fight anymore, but she's still not ready to give up and says she won't die a worthless death, and she'll also continue living in her friend's memories. He punches her, but she stabs his hand and uses the death reward spell that burns them both to dust. On the other hand, Tomoki wonders if he should have fought with Hibiki, but Lily says he made the right choice because he symbolizes hope for the people of Gritania. We see that Io is still alive, and Rona tells him about Sophia's defeat, thinking that whoever the goddess summoned to face her must have been a monster. Back in the present, Mio plans on going to the port town of Karan to find seaweed and kelp, which are commonly used in the Japanese dishes that Makoto likes, whereas Tomo learns that a lake appeared where Makoto fought Sophia, so she wants to investigate it. Mio says they'll be alone for a while, but Tomo tells her that Makoto and Shiki have reached Rotsgard, and once things calm down, they'll return to the demi-plane. Shiki sees all the shops in Rotsgard and thinks business must be competitive here, and Makoto tells him to start gathering information. They come across a girl surrounded by men. The girl tries to leave, but a man pushes her, and Makoto tells him to stop, but since he can't speak their language they ignore his writing, so he tells Shiki to talk with them. Shiki tries to talk some sense into them, but when they don't behave, Makoto thinks that if Mio and Tomo were here, they would have wanted to kill them, but since he's with Shiki, he thinks he won't have that problem, but Shiki gets mad at their attitude. The men tell them to stay away, as they need to talk with the girl, but Shiki says he will allow them to live if they leave, which makes Makoto realize he's picking a fight on purpose. The men use wind magic and start floating, but Makoto wonders why they're not attacking. Shiki uses earth magic and sends them up into the sky, but Makoto removes his spell, and he thinks Makoto will soon become a master at counter-spelling. Makoto asks the girl to run away, but she says she didn't ask for his help, so Makoto tells her that he doesn't expect anything in exchange for his help. She realizes he's not like the other men, and tells him that she's a waitress at the Gotetsu restaurant, and she'll properly thank them if they visit the place. Shiki finds the girl rude, but Makoto understands why she would be suspicious of a stranger saving her. They notice the men still floating, so Makoto tells Shiki to help them. But Shiki drops them to the ground and thinks they shouldn't have gotten involved, and Makoto says he got curious after seeing the girl's eyes. Makoto tells Shiki that the Academy's entrance exam is in 3 days, and Shiki's surprised that he plans on taking it, but he explains that he needs to enter the Academy to get permission for opening the store. Shiki mentions that Makoto isn't taking the new student test, but the teacher employment test, which shocks him since he doesn't know what that is. Shiki explains that it's a test to become a teacher, and tells him that it's written on the documents given by Rembrandt, but we learn that this was mistakenly done by Morris due to his weak eyesight. On the exam day, Makoto wonders if they have any other position he could fill, but his request is denied. The worker makes fun of Makoto's appearance, which makes Shiki angry and he attacks him, but Makoto holds him back and apologizes to the man. A woman arrives and apologizes on behalf of the other employee, and asks Makoto if he wants to take the practical or written test. She notices that he has a recommendation letter from the Rembrandt Company and thinks he must be quite accomplished. Makoto isn't sure what test he should take, but Shiki tells the woman he'll take the practical test, since only a few people manage to pass it. The examinees are told that the exam will last 3 days, and they're asked to go to the testing area. They're given a feather-shaped item that they should use if they want to return, and a bell-shaped item if they want to drop out. Examinees aren't allowed to fight, but they'll be far from each other, so it's unlikely they'll cross paths, and to pass the exam, they must bring back 3 of the orbs flying across the site. Makoto is transported to the testing area, and he uses his investigative kai to see that there's plenty of food and water. He finds this place a paradise compared to the wasteland he was first dropped in. He sees a red orb, and reading the instructions, he realizes that only specific attacks work on each orb, and if they're attacked in any other way they'll break. Physical attacks work on the red orbs, so he punches it, but to his surprise, it bursts into pieces. He finds a yellow orb, which can only be attacked with magic, so he uses his Brit to attack, but it also shatters. He comes across a blue orb, which can be captured using range attacks, so he uses his bow and arrow, but the result is the same. He isn't sure what he's doing wrong and wonders if his attacks have too much power. He remembers he's constantly using his strengthening spell, so he removes it and tries to catch a red orb, but fails again. The next day, he learns using his investigative kind that one of the other examinees is gone, so he decides to hurry up even if it isn't a race. He tries to catch a blue orb by grazing it with the feather end of his arrow, but it suddenly teleports elsewhere. He uses the same technique and finally captures it, but he senses that another examinee has also disappeared, and he wonders if they are passing the test or dropping out. He prepares to catch a yellow orb, so he weakens himself with Weakening Kai and reduces the Brit Flame to attack, and captures it successfully. Later that night, he senses a new person entering the test, but he's not worried as long as they don't bother him. The next morning, as he wakes up, he's attacked by a man dressed in black, who throws his knives at him, but he blocks them. The man disappears, but Makoto knows he's behind him and tries to get away, but he gets caught. The man tries to stab him, but Makoto grabs his blade and breaks it in half, which cuts his hand, and he realizes that it had poison on it. Makoto asks the man if he's attacking the examinees, and he reveals that he made everyone else leave the test and only Makoto remains. He mentions that he wasn't excited about being hired to threaten him, but will make him pay for breaking his blade. He reveals that his blade was covered in a fast-acting poison, but he's shocked to learn that the poison has been neutralized. Makoto offers to reveal how he neutralized the poison if he tells him who hired him, but the man says he has no contact with his employer. The man realizes he can't move, and Makoto reveals he has temporarily paralyzed him from the neck down. He tells him that his poison didn't work on him because he's immune to it, and he kicks him into the sky. Makoto still can't capture the red orbs since his body continuously releases mana, but he gets an idea to use the back of his knife to attack the orb, and finally manages to capture it. He uses the feather to return to the academy, and the examiner wonders if he also dropped out like the other contestants, but is surprised when he sees that Makoto collected all the orbs. The examiner gets shocked that he caught 3 orbs of different colors when he only asked for 3 of the same color. Makoto tells Shiki that he has been appointed as a temporary instructor, and he wants to go to the Gotetsu restaurant since the next exam won't be for a while. On the other hand, the examiner drinks with a girl at the bar, and reveals that no one was supposed to pass the exam because someone made a request to increase the difficulty, but Makoto still managed to pass, which the girl finds interesting. Makoto gets called to the academy, but he decides to have lunch first and thinks they've been eating at Gotetsu for 5 straight days. The girl they rescued named Luria takes their order, and she finds it odd that instead of sharing a hot pot like the others, they're ordering separately. We see one of the bullies named Alumgand secretly watching them, when he's approached by a girl from the academy, who gives him a magic medicine that'll increase his physical and magical abilities. At the academy, Makoto's informed about the rules for teachers, and although he can promote his business, he's not allowed to exchange money on the academy grounds. He learns that the teachers are paid 10 silver coins per student, and part-time teachers can lecture a maximum of 30 students. Makoto agrees to start teaching soon, but he plans to teach only a few students, which surprises the academy employees since most teachers try to gather more students. One of the full-time teachers named Bright talks to Makoto about his plan for teaching practical skills, and he tells Makoto that his focus is on theory, but he also teaches combat techniques. He offers to send his students to Makoto's class if they're interested, and mentions that this year there are many extraordinary students, with a few being able to cast floating spells and communicate telepathically, which makes Makoto wonder if he's talking about the boys he fought before. Later on, Makoto goes to the library to find material for his lecture, and the librarian asks if she can help him find the books. He wonders if they have books on magic incantation, but as she calls him by his name, he instantly creates a barrier and jumps back. She praises his quick reflexes, but Makoto wonders who she is and how she knows his name. She tells him that she knows every teacher's name, but Makoto doesn't believe her, since the academy has hundreds of teachers. She mentions she heard about him from her sister Luria, and she introduces herself as Eva, but Makoto finds her suspicious. On the other hand, Mio learns how to cook from a girl named Beretta, and she's enjoying her time, but the girl is scared by her knife handling. At the Rotsguard Academy, the students talk about how they're unsure if Makoto is a worthy teacher, but Makoto hears them and realizes that the students aren't taking him seriously, so he tells Shiki that he'll be a strict teacher. The students arrive for their class, and the female students find Shiki handsome, but their views of Makoto are completely opposite. Makoto tells them to pay attention since his class on magic is going to be difficult, but one of the students says that his specialty is with the sword. Makoto learns that no one can use more than one element, so he decides to use Tomo's strategy and calls out everyone for their lack of skills, saying that with the way things are, they'll all end up being third-rate magicians. The students believe it's normal to be skilled in just one element, but Makoto warns them that if their only element fails in battle, they'll be in big trouble, so they should learn at least 3 elements. The students doubt his abilities, so he arranges a practice fight with Shiki to show them what he can do. The students are impressed by Shiki's staff since it contains mana of different elements, but they can't sense any mana from Makoto. The fight begins, and Shiki lunges with a flaming attack, but it does nothing against Makoto's barrier. Shiki continues his attack, and Makoto notes how he has gotten faster, so Shiki thanks his training with Tomo and Mio. Makoto counters with a fire blast, pushing Shiki back, but Makoto is impressed he survived. Shiki uses his earth magic, but Makoto fires a fire arrow that instantly destroys it. The students can't believe what they're watching, and Makoto launches a boulder at Shiki, but he stops it with a counterspell, so Makoto tries shooting a fire and water arrows simultaneously, but Shiki still manages to stop it, crediting the dwarfs who made his staff. They decide to end things, so they both start chanting their incantations. The students are surprised to see Makoto can speak, and wonder how much stronger the chanted spells will be. The two clash, causing a massive explosion, which even injures one of the students, and as the dust settles, we see that Shiki has been defeated. Makoto ends his class, telling them it's their choice if they want to join, but says if they want to become stronger, then they should join his class. Before Makoto leaves, he asks Shiki to heal the girl who got hurt during their battle. He immediately heals her, but her face turns red when he touches her, as she has developed a crush on him. She thinks he must have used an expensive medicine, but Shiki tells her that it's common in their shop. The students have mixed reactions to the battle, with a few being terrified, while the others are impressed by their new instructor. On the other hand, Tomo goes to the lake that was created after Makoto's battle, and questions a man who was present at the time. The man thinks that Makoto was here to punish them, which is why he fired an arrow of punishment to destroy everything. Tomo reads his memories, and after seeing what happened, she thinks about how there's never a dull moment with her master. Makoto's second class starts, and he's surprised to see 5 students show up, whereas Shiki takes their attendance and introduces everyone. There's Masura Casper, who's excellent with his studies, and his parents are connected with the temple. Next is Dinah Severus, who's actually married, and his wife is currently on maternity leave from the academy. The girl is introduced as Abelia Hopley, and there's the aspiring mage Izumo Kusakabe. The final student is Jin Rohan, but he aspires to be a swordsman, so Makoto wonders what he's doing in the class. Izumo wonders how Makoto can chant his incantation when he can't speak, but Makoto tells them he can speak every language except common. The class starts, and Makoto asks them what effects spending mana has on the body. They know that spending half of one's mana causes fatigue, and using all of it may result in loss of consciousness and vomiting, while exceeding your mana limit can even cause death. They wonder why Makoto is asking such a simple question, so he tells them that he wants to test their limits in battle. He warns them that they may get injured, but he has enough mana and stamina recovering medicines for them to buy. He tells them to attack him all at once, but most of them are easily defeated. Only Masura and Jin remain, but Masura uses the last of his mana to heal Jin and passes out. Jin tries to land just one hit, but to no avail, as he's also defeated by Makoto, who tells him not to attack recklessly. After the battle, Makoto tells them it's good for them to know their limits, and he asks them to submit a detailed report on what they learned from the lesson. Meanwhile, Illumbin walks around the academy looking at the medicine, but he's shocked to see Makoto there. At night, Makoto tells Shiki that the students have more potential than he thought, and he admits that although he may not be suited to be a teacher, he'll do his best. We see that the assassin who attacked Makoto was hired by Bright, and he tells the assassin to finish the job. Makoto opens his shop in Rotsgard and wants Eris and Aqua to leave the shop in Sage and start working here, but they're afraid it might upset Mio and Tomo. Makoto convinces them that working here will be easier since they'll get breaks and won't have a manager constantly criticizing them. We learn that Makoto's facing a unique problem because a lot of the female students have been proposing to him, thinking that he's rich. Makoto takes out a picture of his parents and thinks this is the ideal kind of marriage, but Eva finds him looking at it and asks who they are, so he tells her that he owes them a great deal. He thinks the students have a strange view on marriage, so she tells him that most of the students in this academy are children of merchants, and they don't think love is necessary for marriage, which makes Makoto think that Tomo and Mio are better than them since they aren't after his money. On the other hand, Lime reports to Tomo that someone fought the dragon Laika before the Battle of Fort Stella. He wonders if Tomo has found anything about the ring that removes the goddess's blessing, but she hasn't, and she tells him to stop talking because someone followed him. A group of travelers knock on their door, revealing that they came here because they heard about a strange weapon, and as the door opens, we see that the travelers are Tomoki and his friends. They introduce themselves, and Lime realizes that Lily is the second princess of Gritonia, and Tomoki is their hero. Lily says that they came here to study the lake, but she's interrupted by Tomoki, who is fascinated by Tomo's katana and wishes to see it. She gives it to him and tries to explain something, but he doesn't care about what she has to say. He tries to unsheath it and fails, so Tomo tells them that only she can use it, which shocks him since he can wield any weapon. Tomo takes back the sword and unsheathes it, impressing everyone, and Lily wishes to buy it, but Tomo reminds her that only she can use it. Lily tries to pressure her by revealing her identity as a princess, but it has no effect on Tomo, who refuses to be a part of their team. Tomo realizes they want her blades so they can use it to make more weapons. She tells them that she isn't going to sell her katana, so Tomoki uses his magic eye on Lime, and he offers to give them his sword. Tomoki also tries to convince Tomo, but she's unaffected by his eye, and says she's disappointed after meeting Gritonia's hero. Tomoki again tries to charm her, but she doesn't like his intentions and says she belongs only to Makoto. Mora realizes that Tomo is a dragon, so she tries to use her power to control her, but it doesn't work, as Tomo cancels her spell, which also removes Tomoki's magic from Lime. Lime calls Tomoki a goon, which makes him mad, and he attacks him with his spear. Tomo calls him trash, and looking into her eyes reminds him of the bullies from his previous life. He tries to attack her, but she uses her mist to teleport them away. She says she'll act as if they never met, and warns them that if they act foolishly again, she won't hesitate to kill Tomoki, but since she's the only one he hasn't been able to charm, he's determined to find a way to have her. Lime feels ashamed that he willingly gave his sword to Tomoki, but Tomo asks him to become her servant, and he immediately accepts, saying that he doesn't want to feel powerless again. Meanwhile, Mio collects seaweed scraps, but is suddenly attacked by Hibiki's wolf spirit. Mio is about to kill him, but Hibiki stops her and apologizes for her spirit's actions. Hibiki offers to help Mio with her injury, but Mio says she's fine. Hibiki still wants to make things right, so Mio asks her to help her choose the best seagrass pieces. Hibiki asks her if she's talking about the seaweed and kelp, and Mio is excited since she can tell the difference between the two of them. Later on, Hibiki reveals that she was traveling to Sage to buy weapons, but Mio's more interested in getting cooking tips from her. Woody thinks about Hibiki's deep emotional scars, and how she has been hiding her true feelings since Navel's death. Mio senses a creature coming their way, so she decides to check whether Hibiki's strong enough to take care of it. As they come face to face with the creature, Hibiki asks Chia to make a defensive barrier, and she tells Woody to provide them with support. Verta attacks the creature, but his sword starts breaking, and Mio thinks that they aren't that bad, but are poorly equipped. Verta thinks he has to fill in for Navel's absence, and he attacks recklessly, which breaks his sword and he gets injured. Hibiki sees his blood and remembers Navel, which makes her freeze up, so she asks Mio to help them. Mio says it's their fault for not knowing their strength, so she steps in and easily defeats the creature. She asks them to help her harvest materials from the monster, but it's still alive and attacks Mio from behind. The attack tears Mio's kimono, which makes her furious because Makoto had praised her in it, so she completely blows it up, and the party can't believe what they're seeing. But Mio suddenly knocks them all out, and Hibiki's wolf emerges. Mio realizes that it recognizes her from their previous fight, but mentions how she's different now and means no harm. Hibiki wakes up in a room with a letter from Mio, saying that she brought them to Saige, and asks her to visit Makoto's shop once she wakes up. They go to the shop where they meet Mio, and Hibiki tells her that she'll accept any criticism from the battle since she had to ask for help, but Mio just wants her to teach her how to cook. Wui mentions they came to Saige to buy equipment and train in the wasteland, but Mio tells them that they aren't strong enough to survive there. Hibiki tells her they have to get stronger, and Biren offers to make equipment, but while they're being made, Hibiki should help Mio with her cooking. Mio thinks that the equipment doesn't guarantee their survival, and she also can't learn to make broth in just 3 days, so Biren proposes to send Toa and her party to ensure their survival. Meanwhile in Rotsgard, Shiki tells Makoto that Tomo wants him to return to the demi-plane because she has a lot to report, and in their absence, the forest ogres will take care of the shop. Makoto is a little worried, but decides to trust Shiki and returns to the demi-plane. Makoto wonders why it's so hot even though it's night, and Shiki mentions the weather has been changing irregularly in the demi-plane. They go to Makoto's newly constructed house, where everyone welcomes him back. Mio serves him a dish that he finds tasty, which makes her happy, and Tomo reveals that Mio was the one who cooked most of the food for the party, so Makoto praises her cooking, and she promises to serve him even more delicious food in the future. Mio leaves in excitement, and Emma reveals that she's going to Saige where she's learning from an adventurer. Tomo reports to Makoto that during her investigation, she met the Gritonia Empire's hero, and Makoto wonders what he was like, but she thinks he was trash. She mentions that Tomoki overestimates his abilities, and is easily consumed by his desires, which makes her think he might go to war with the other kingdoms after defeating the demons. She also mentions that she read the princess's mind and saw an image of a firearm. Shiki thinks that Tomoki must have told them about it, but Makoto doesn't consider them to be as strong as magic. Tomo mentions she considered killing them, but Makoto tells her just to watch them for the time being. We learn Shiki told Tomo everything about their situation in Rotsgard, so she teases Makoto for being so popular at the academy. Makoto still wonders why it's so hot in the demi-plane, and Tomo thinks it's due to the mist gates that he has been opening. She reveals that the last place Makoto opens a gate affects the weather in the demi-plane, but he's confused since it was cool at the academy. Shiki thinks that the weather at the gate's location affects the demi-plane in a more complicated way, so Tomo decides to look into it. Meanwhile, Hibiki tells Mio that she has been asked to return to Limia, and even though Mio wants to learn more from her, she understands her situation. She thanks Mio because they wouldn't have survived in the wasteland if it wasn't for her, and Hibiki asks Mio to come with her, but she refuses her offer, saying that the only thing that matters to her is Makoto. Emma shows Makoto their new plants, and says the harvesting has increased thanks to Shiki's instructions, but he says he just told everyone what could be accomplished by using earth magic based on Makoto's knowledge. Makoto is happy that they won't have to worry about food anymore, and even though he's concerned about the weather, he still wants to increase the population of the demi-plane. Makoto meets with Eld, who shows him a piece that Mio brought back from the monster that damaged her kimono. Eld reveals that it belongs to a monster that consumed a wind spirit, which is shocking since monsters don't usually do this, so someone did it deliberately, and Shiki confesses that he was the one who created the monster for an experiment before he met Makoto. He fed the monster's weakened spirits, hoping they would turn into one, but he never saw the results. Makoto meets the species selected by Mio and the others for moving into the demi-plane. There are representatives from all 3 species, but Makoto thinks it's a bit arrogant to summon them instead of visiting them. Emma mentions that they're the ones trying to move in, so it's normal that they are the ones to come, and she also tells Makoto to start acting like the master of the demi-plane. Makoto meets Kaken, the leader of the Wingkin species, and his advisor Shona. They fly in front of Makoto, which makes Emma angry, because they seem to be looking down on Makoto, so she tells them to get down. Makoto thinks they're impressive, considering they live in a place even more remote than the mountain where Tomo lived, but they say that even though their area is remote, it still has plenty of resources. Makoto wonders if they've been protecting their village alone, and they say they were able to do so because they're good fighters. They wonder if they'll be treated the same as everyone else and given a good job, and when Makoto says yes, they become emotional. He meets with Tomo's Gorgons next, and Makoto asks them to take off their masks, but they explain how their eyes can turn people to stone, and Makoto recalls how they were called Medusas in his old life. He assures them that he'll be okay, but they are afraid he won't be able to handle it since they can't sense any mana from him, which makes Emma angry. They remove their masks, turning Makoto's desk into stone. He thinks their eyes must be troublesome for them, and they even mention how they turn their food into stone. He learns that their species has only females, and they reproduce by absorbing the energy from males of other species. He finds this scary, and explains that if they join the demiplane, he won't be able to provide them with males to reproduce with. They're okay with this, but worry that their eyes will affect the other residents, so Makoto tells them not to worry, saying he can create glasses with the same effect as their masks. They ask him if he's sure about letting them live there, because once they turn something into stone, they can't turn it back. But Makoto assures them that he has a solution, and he's able to restore his desk back to normal, but it quickly turns back to stone. He realizes that he needs to apply petrification resistance, so he tries again, and this time it stays normal. The Gorgons are happy seeing this, since they thought they would always have to wear a mask. Makoto then meets with the Elemera, who are attempting to leave their forest after being discovered by a pack of Raizu. Makoto thinks they are fairies, but they say there's something between fairies and spirits, and are capable of commanding low-level spirits. Emma is annoyed by their behavior, but Makoto sees potential in them since they can gather information. He's about to invite them to the demi-plane, but Emma opposes it, thinking they will be too problematic. At night, Makoto meets with Tomo and Shiki to discuss the two species that passed the interview. Shiki decides to start working on the glasses for the Gorgons, while Tomo plans to create a training schedule for the Wingkin. Mio arrives with another dish that includes mayonnaise, which makes Makoto think about his old world, while Shiki imagines making a mayonnaise hot pot. It starts raining in the demiplane, and Tomo believes her theory that Makoto's mist gates are causing the weather changes seems correct. Mio finds it hard to store ingredients due to the changing climate, and Shiki notes that the demiplane could be hit by storms or droughts at any moment. Makoto thinks they need regularity in the weather, so Tomo decides to look for places that experience all the weather conditions. Makoto prepares to head back to Rothsgard, which makes everyone sad, but he promises to return when he gets free time. He gets back to Rothsgard, and Aqua and Eris give him all the earnings from the shop. Shiki thinks they should hire more employees since their business has been good, and Makoto gives them bananas as a bonus. At the academy, Makoto wonders what paperwork they need to submit to take their class, but Shiki reveals he has already taken care of everything. Bright interrupts them and asks Makoto for 10 healing potions, saying they are great, so Makoto tells him to come to the shop, because they have many other products. Makoto is shocked by all the letters he received while he was gone, and Shiki says he'll take care of them, so Makoto just asks to see the important documents. There is an application from 3 students to join his class, but he's shocked when he sees their names. His class begins, and Makoto asks the new students to introduce themselves. There's Sif Rembrandt, who is on leave from the academy due to illness. She excels in attack magic, particularly with earth and fire elements, and has the protection of spirits due to her earth affinity. Next is her sister Yuno Rembrandt, who's skilled in physical combat and is capable of using enhancement magic. Makoto recalls how they were both cursed and is glad to see they have fully recovered. The last student is Karen Force, who transferred from the Husk Royal Academy and specializes in the water element. Makoto wants everyone to get along and tells the Rembrandt sisters that even though he's friends with their father, he won't go easy on them. The students are confused by how the sisters are acting and think they are just pretending to be nice. Makoto sees that the students are acting suspiciously, and Shiki tells him that the sisters have a bad reputation because they boast about their wealth and their looks, but Makoto thinks they don't seem that way. Makoto tells the new students to stay put while the rest follow him, and he reveals that he's going to summon a creature for them to fight, which makes them worried. He summons a lizard man, but tells him not to use his breath attack and to only fight at 20% of his strength. Makoto returns to the other 3 and tells them to attack him so that he can tell them about their flaws. He tells them to start, and Yuno starts shooting her arrows, while the others begin chanting their spells. The arrows fail to penetrate Makoto's shield, so he advises Yuno to infuse them with mana and strengthen her physical body. Sith launches a fire blast, and Karen freezes Makoto, but he remains unaffected. Makoto tells Sith to concentrate on intensity and casting faster, while Karen should prioritize power and duration over speed. Yuno fires another arrow, but Makoto burns it before it can reach him. He criticizes her sloppy enhancement, telling her she focuses too much on firing a single power shot, which makes her bow handling careless, so he tells her to use her spear next. He tells them that this will be an unforgettable loss for them, but it's better for them to experience it as soon as possible. Meanwhile, the lizard man swings his sword towards the students, and the force from it blows everyone back. Izumo uses an incantation to allow everyone to walk freely in the wind, so Abelia uses this opportunity to shoot a fire arrow. The lizard man dodges, but when he's in the air, Jin tries to slash him, but the lizard man knocks him away. The fights end, and Makoto tells the students to submit a report about where they should improve, but he tells Karen to come with him. The students are depressed by how easily they were defeated, but Shiki assures them that Makoto will never give them obstacles they can't overcome. He tells them that Makoto has high hopes for them, which is why he's harsh, and Shiki's jealous of them because it's been a while since Makoto expected anything from him. Meanwhile, Makoto talks with Karen about how she's too strong to be a student, and she reveals she was a military mage in her kingdom. Makoto has already looked into her past, but he wonders if she's even the real Karen, which makes her laugh. Makoto asks her what the demons want with the academy, and reveals that even though she doesn't have horns, he can tell by her skin color and eyes that she's a demon. Karen still tries to put on an innocent face and charm Makoto, but he tells her that it doesn't work on him. She praises him for seeing through her so quickly, and reveals that the real Karen is dead, but it was her own allies who killed her. She wonders why he isn't angry after finding out that she's a demon, and he tells her that he doesn't discriminate, so he'll let her go if they can come to an agreement. He wonders what her real name is, but she doesn't answer and prepares to kill him, but Shiki arrives and reveals her as Rona, one of the 4 generals of the demon army. They go to Gotetsu, and Rona says she wants to know about Makoto's trading company. She knows he has another shop in Ion, and wonders if he's their agent, but he tells her they're a neutral party. Makoto asks her why she infiltrated the academy, and she tells him not to be wary of her, but Shiki tells him not to lower his guard. She thinks they should get to know each other better, but Shiki tells her that if she sleeps with Makoto, she'll regret it for the rest of her life. Makoto again asks her why she came to the academy, so she reveals that she wants to stop the humanoid experiments that are secretly conducted in the city. Lime comes to Rothsgard to help Makoto, so he tells Lime to find the people responsible for the human trafficking trade happening in the city, and reveals that the Assassin Guild is involved. Makoto asks Aqua and Eris to help Lime, and they are hesitant to work overtime, but end up agreeing after Makoto offers them more bananas. Shiki tells Makoto to doubt everything Rona says, and Makoto wonders how he knows her. Shiki mentions they used to exchange information, but she used him several times and got him into trouble. She's loyal to the Demon King since she owes him a great debt, and Shiki thinks that even though she isn't as strong as Mio, she's a more cunning version of her. They go to meet the Rembrandt sisters, and Shiki mentions that getting an audience with them took a lot of effort. Makoto apologizes to them for not visiting when they were ill, and congratulates them on fully recovering. They notice Makoto behaving differently from how he was during his lecture, and he explains that teaching brings out his strict side. They thank Makoto for healing them, and ask if they can do anything for him, but he tells them not to feel indebted to him. On the other hand, Lime's investigation leads him to an abandoned building on the academy grounds, but he senses someone near him, so he draws his sword, but the man smiles. Eris and Aqua tell Makoto that they lost contact with Lime, and the last place they could reach him was near the academy. Shiki believes Rona has betrayed them, but Makoto wants to be sure before making any assumptions. Meanwhile, Lime and Eva are imprisoned in a dungeon, and he apologizes for getting her involved. We learn that when Lime came across the mysterious individual, he tried contacting Makoto, but the man blocked his telepathy. Seeing no other option, Lime attacked, but the man easily defeated him, and after he left, Eva tried to help Lime, but she also got caught. Lime says he works for Makoto's company, but she thinks he's more like a bodyguard. He asks if she wants to escape, but she says that their attackers are from a powerful organization and have connections in the academy, so it won't make a difference if she escapes. She also mentions that he was already beaten, but he tells her not to worry because the man isn't there, revealing he marked the man during the fight, so he knows his location. Eva mentions that if he manages to rescue her, she will give him valuable information, and she also offers a reward if they take down the organization. Lime reveals his hidden sickle and uses it to break out of the cell, but on their way out, they are surprised to see the experiments that have been done on humans and demi-humans. Eva believes their goal is to increase combat and magical abilities, whereas Lime decides to kill everyone who was experimented on to put them out of their misery. Meanwhile, Shiki and Makoto inspect the place where Lime disappeared, and Shiki senses a dragon's presence, making him think they aren't dealing with demons, since Rona doesn't have a good relationship with dragons. Makoto wonders if it could be Lancer and Sophia, which makes Shiki excited to avenge Makoto for his battle with them. Lime suddenly appears, which makes Shiki disappointed since he didn't get to fight, while Makoto is surprised to see Eva. Makoto reads a detailed report of the incident, and he becomes interested in the man who defeated Lime. Shiki tells him that Eva wants to tell him something, and Makoto instructs him to meet Rona and learn about the people who are helping the organization from within the academy. Eva wants to fulfill her part of the deal, and she agrees to give them information, but the reward will come after they destroy the organization. She remembers Makoto looking at a picture of his parents, and says that she knows who they are. She reveals that his father was a noble, and his mother was a high-ranking priestess. They were supposed to get married in Kalneon, but were forced to leave before the wedding. Makoto wonders why they were forced to leave, but Eva doesn't know, because the records were destroyed in a demon invasion 10 years ago, so he wonders how she knows about his parents, and she reveals that she and Luria are also from Kalneon. They managed to escape during the invasion, but the people called them cowards for leaving. Because of their past, they're not allowed to talk about their families and were constantly harassed. At one point, they even thought about ending their lives, but they realized it wouldn't solve anything, so they decided to try to reclaim the lost lands of her family. She started investigating the organization, hoping she could use them to accomplish her goal, but she got caught when she ran into Lime. At night, Makoto wonders about the strength of the organization and considers the possibility of them joining the war. He suddenly senses someone nearby, and Lime warns him that the man who defeated him is approaching them. Makoto instructs Lime to get Shiki, but he insists he's ready to fight. Mio and Tomo suddenly appear through a mist gate and advise Lime to stay back. The man arrives and introduces himself as the guild master of the Adventurers Guild. He apologizes for his actions towards Lime, which surprises Makoto and the others. They offer him tea, but he asks for fruit, which frustrates Mio, but Makoto tells her to fulfill his request. Makoto wonders what he's doing here, but he asks Makoto to speak, since he is aware of his abilities. Makoto gets curious about his identity, but before he can answer, Tomo reveals that his name is Ludo, and he's one of the greater dragons. Ludo tells Tomo to mind her manners since he wants to talk with Makoto, but she tells him she won't let him deceive her master. He gets close to Makoto, but Tomo draws her sword and asks about when he became a man. He says he got bored of living as a woman, and they get ready to fight him, but he tells them he just wants to talk about the Adventurers Guild. On the other hand, Rona decides to help with the investigation, but tells Shiki not to oppose her methods. Since she's already accomplished her original objective, she wishes to see Makoto's true power. Meanwhile, Ludo tells everyone that he was the one who formed the guild 1,000 years ago, hoping it would spread throughout the world and help solve problems in the communities. He also made the guild members get licenses that show their level, and reveals that the idea of levels came from the video games of Makoto's world. Tomo wonders why he made the guild, and he explains that it was to keep the humans who had grown arrogant due to the goddess's blessing in check. Makoto thinks the guild was to encourage human growth, but Ludo says that people join the guild because of ambition, and they are eventually destroyed by their own desires, which automatically thins out the human population. He reveals that the highest level in the guild is 65,535, which he chose because of a romantic speech his master gave, but Makoto thinks about how the number appears in the old game, since it's the highest number in 16-bit programming. Makoto asks how his master could know about video games if he came 1,000 years ago, so Ludo explains that time flows differently in the different worlds. Makoto wonders about his chances of returning to his old world, and Ludo explains that at his current mana level, there's a 1 in 10 million chance of success. Ludo prepares to leave, but Tomo decides to see him off since she doesn't trust him. As they leave, Tomo asks Ludo if it's true that humans from Makoto's world die in 100 years, but he says that only a few of them reach that age. Tomo says that Makoto means everything to her, and if he died, the world wouldn't interest her anymore. She wonders if Makoto will try to go to his old world, and Ludo thinks he won't be able to abandon her, but he might change in the future and become a being that can freely travel between both worlds. Shiki thinks they can't trust Rona, but Makoto is impressed by her since she managed to find some people connected with the organization. Rona tells Makoto that she's leaving the academy since she has accomplished her goals, and she will notify the academy of Karen's death, but Makoto wants her to just say she's leaving due to a family emergency. She warns him not to trust Shiki and the forest ogres, and before she leaves, she gives him an incantation that he can use to contact her in case he ever wants to work with the demons. Makoto shows the incantation to Tomo and Mio, and Tomo thinks they can use this to learn about the cursed items that remove the goddess's blessing. He suddenly realizes that even though Lime is a human, he can talk normally with him, so he asks Tomo about it, and she reveals that she has made him a part of her family by giving him her blood. Tomo thinks they should wait to catch someone big in the organization, but Makoto wants to settle it quickly, since Eva and Luria's safety is at stake. Tomo and Mio ask Makoto to let them take care of it, but he wants to do it on his own, which makes Tomo remember what Ludo said about Makoto changing due to a certain event. Later on, Makoto captures Bright, who threatens him, saying that the organization will make him pay, but Makoto tells him that he knows how Bright has been abandoned since they didn't try to rescue him. Makoto wonders why Bright is defying the goddess, so he mentions that many wars have begun due to the goddess, so it was inevitable that an organization like theirs would appear. He believes that the goddess is not fit to rule the world and that humans can survive without her. Makoto asks him why they used demi-humans in their experiment, but he says that they are naturally the best test subjects. Makoto decides he has heard enough, so he decides to end things. At the academy, the students discuss how the Rembrandt sisters have been acting friendly lately, but one of them mentions how they have been going after the girls who approached Makoto. They wonder if Bright left because of them, while Ilum feels sick because he got addicted to the magic medicine. Makoto's students talk about how Karen had to leave the academy, so the Rembrandt sisters will now join them in their class where they fight the Lizard Man. They know that the Lizard Man is much stronger than them, so they make strategies to defeat him, but in their next fight, Makoto brings another Lizard Man, which makes their plans go to waste, and they are easily defeated again. The students ask Makoto to teach them even during the summer break, and Makoto asks the Rembrandt sisters if they also want to stay, because their father wants them to return home, but they say they also want to learn from him. He asks Shiki about their schedule, but Shiki mentions he has time to take one class a week. So Makoto agrees to take the class on the condition that the Rembrandt sisters return home during the second half of the summer break. On the other hand, Eva promises to give Makoto a piece of her family's land for protecting her once she reclaims Kelneon, but Makoto refuses her offer and instead asks her to recommend him a book. The students fight the Lizard Man again and they finally manage to defeat it, but Shiki heals everyone and tells them to get ready for round 2. The Lizard Man casts a support spell, and Jin attacks him with his sword, but the Lizard Man uses his tail to knock him back, and he freezes everyone else. Meanwhile, the other students are fighting the other lizard named Zwei, where Masura attacks him with his sword, while Sif starts chanting an incantation. The Lizard Man suddenly gets stronger, and is about to defeat Masura, but Dinah throws his sword at him as a distraction. The Lizard Man knocks him away, and throws his weapon at Masura, while Sif tries to hit him with her fire magic, but he dodges it and defeats her as well. After the fight, Makoto apologizes for the Lizard Man going out of control, and reveals that they have been using only a tenth of their strength to fight. The students are shocked, but wonder why he used more strength at the end, so Makoto tells them that he made a mistake when introducing Zwei, revealing that she's a girl, and she got angry when Masura called her a jerk. After the students leave, Shiki tells Makoto that he has shown them a place to increase their level since they are all part of the Adventurers Guild. The students go to the area he suggested, and they manage to defeat the monsters and level up, crediting their improvement to Makoto's lessons, whereas Abelia thinks about how she's in love with Shiki and wants to become his wife. The next day, the students encounter a demi-dragon, and Abelia informs them that they need 10 party members at level 90 to face it. Jin tells Azumo to use his wind magic to boost their speed, but the dragon lets out a roar, causing everyone to freeze in place. The dragon prepares to breathe fire at them, but Eris suddenly shows up and defeats the dragon instantly. They wonder who she is, but she insults them all and disappears. Makoto visits Ludo and asks to learn how to use more mana at one time, but Ludo tells him that no one can increase their mana. Makoto reveals that his mana has been increasing, so Ludo warns Makoto that if the organization finds out about this, they might start experimenting on him. He also wants to know how Makoto has been doing it, but Makoto just says he practices drawing his bow every day. Ludo gives him a training manual, but he doesn't know if the methods will be effective. Makoto meets with Eva, and she recommends a book on the use of mana, but thinks that only an expert can appreciate the unique theories in it. During the summer break, Makoto returns to the demi-plane, where time passes quickly. Emma apologizes for keeping him busy, but he knows he'll return to the academy once the break ends, so he's happy to spend time with everyone. She tells Makoto that he has to do a mock battle with the Wingkin, who have never lost a match against the other species, so Makoto thinks they must be strong. The battle begins, and the Wingkin come flying out of the forest, so Makoto decides to start easy with a few shots, but they all hit, and Makoto seems disappointed. The second wave comes in, and they fly above the clouds to obstruct his vision, but he uses his investigative Kai to see them, and shoots them down again. He can't believe they were undefeated, and thinks the other species must have had trouble since they are flying. Kaken arrives flying on his Lieutenant Shona, and Makoto remembers that the Wingkin have the power to transform. He fires the same blasts as before to see their reaction, and he's happy to see that they have made a barrier protecting them. They start using wind enhancement and dive straight towards Makoto, but he grabs Shona and slams her to the ground. Kaken tries to attack, but he deflects it and shoots a warning blast at his feet, making him surrender. Makoto tells them that they rely too much on their flight, so they should try to develop new attack patterns, or else the other species will soon defeat them. Kaken asks Makoto to allow them to participate in the demi-plane ranking and to help with building. Makoto tells them that anyone can participate in the ranking, but he can't allow them to help build, since their combat abilities aren't suitable for the job. At night, Makoto reads Ludo's training methods, but they're too difficult for him to understand. He goes to an open field and follows the instructions, releasing a huge amount of mana while continuously firing his magic. He suddenly feels a strange sensation, and the next thing he knows, it's already morning, as Tomo and Mio wake him up. They return to their house, where Mio serves him a delicious breakfast. Tomo tries to take some of his food, but Mio stops her, saying she should only eat what was given to her. Several days pass, and Makoto has learned how to use the mana outside his body, so he continues training. He also found an incantation in the book Eva recommended that might materialize his mana. So he uses his concealing Kai to hide his mana and starts chanting the incantation, which converts his mana into a physical form. The mana covers his entire body, and to check how hard it is, he tackles a tree and easily destroys it, which makes him think he will be able to fight anyone without getting hurt. The next day, Tomo tells Makoto that everyone wants to show him how much they have improved, and to do so, she dug out a giant boulder from a mountain, and Shiki casts a spell on it, so that it can show their power levels. Emma and Agar step up on behalf of the Highland Orcs. She buffs him with her magic, and he uses his hammer to strike the boulder, earning them 78 points. The Mist Lizards are up next, but they shoot their attacks into the sky, which confuses Makoto, but Tomo explains that they're showing the Wingkin that they can now hit targets in the sky. The lizards aim at the boulder, and they score 68 points. The Elder Dwarves score 70 points, while the Alki gets 65, but the Gorgons don't earn any points, since their eyes have no effect on the boulder. The Wingkin mark the boulder and attack it from the skies. Their hits are accurate, but are also weak, earning them only 20 points. Aqua and Eris represent the Forest Ogres. They create an ice barrier around the boulder, and tell everyone to break through it if they can, but no one succeeds. Tomo considers the barrier almost perfect, but Makoto notices a flaw, so he digs under the boulder and dispels the barrier, earning them 50 points. Mio also wants to try, so she makes a hero suit she saw in Makoto's memories, but it receives no points from the boulder. Shiki is the final person to try, and he transforms his staff into a sword. Tomo notes that the elder dwarves made it for him, calling it the Dragon Slayer. He slashes at the boulder, and he's able to split it in half. Makoto is impressed, and he also decides to show off his new ability. He unleashes his mana, converting it to its physical form, leaving everyone amazed. Shiki calls it mana matter, and Makoto punches the boulder, completely shattering it into pieces. He wonders what they think of his new skill, but they are all left completely speechless. Meanwhile, we see a bear and a wolf alarmed by Makoto's immense mana, and they wonder if he poses a threat. Tomo tells Makoto that a bear and a wolf attacked the highland orcs, and Makoto wonders if it's due to the irregular weather in the demi-plane, so he wants to make a mist gate at the right place to get rid of the problem, whereas Mio thinks about cooking the bear, but Makoto tells her no, and says he wants to talk to them because he admires them. Makoto goes to the woods, where a bear appears before him, so he uses his red suit and quickly gets behind it, but starts cuddling it, which confuses the bear. The bear tries to hit him, but he uses mana matter to block and knocks it out. Makoto realizes that the wolf is also nearby, so he tries to tell them that he just wants to talk. He sees that there's a pack of wolves, and they attack him, but they aren't able to do anything against the mana matter. The wolves mention that they sensed extraordinary mana from him, and since he's the king of the demi-plane, they can't ignore him, but Makoto says he doesn't want to rule over them and just wants to apologize. He promises not to enter their woods again and even suggests helping them, so the wolves are shocked that Makoto wants to share his territory, even though he's so strong. Makoto says he just wants to coexist and would like them to continue protecting the woods. A huge bear interrupts them and introduces himself as Brownie. He accepts Makoto's offer, but the wolf isn't sure if the one in the sky will agree. They go through with the agreement anyway, and the forest is named the Wolf's Woods. We see Makoto scolding Tomo and Komo for picking every persimmon on sight, but they are interrupted by an enormous eagle, who reveals that the wolves told him about Makoto, so he wants to introduce himself. He shrinks in size to talk, and introduces himself as the Boulder Bird, the ruler of the skies and mountains. He plans on watching the skies for Makoto, and wonders if he has any plans for him, but Makoto tells him to keep doing what he's been doing. Makoto mentions that he knows about rock birds, and the eagle asks to be called Rock because he likes the name. After he leaves, Makoto thinks about how he has been gaining more followers, which makes Tomo jealous, and she says that those who have not formed contracts with him should be called his subjects and not his followers. On the other hand, Abelia meets Jin for drinks, and he tells her that he has been working with Shiki, which makes her jealous. Jin thinks about how they have never talked like this before, but she says that their hands have been full, because if their grades fall, they will lose their scholarships, so in a way, they are more like rivals than friends. Jin wants to beat the demi-dragon before the summer break ends, and Abelia believes they have a chance, so they decide to make it their last activity before the end of the summer break. They talk about how they were scouted by the academy, but weren't making any progress before they met Makoto. Jin wonders why Abelia isn't going home during the break, but she tells him she has nowhere to go, since her mother is already dead. Jin talks about a girl named Miranda, who lived in his village and was stronger than him. She was an orphan who was forced to fight monsters and handle difficult jobs, and Abelia wonders if she was his master, but he reveals she was his first love. He started to help her out, but one day, they were ordered to investigate the Forbidden Forest, where they came across a mage workshop. They were attacked by a monster, but while he was struck with fear, Miranda went on a rampage and killed the monster, which made him call her a monster, causing her to run away. He couldn't forgive himself for his powerlessness, so he honed his skills and came to the academy, and he wants to become as strong as Miranda so he can apologize to her. Eris tells Makoto that the students are trying to fight the demi-dragon again without telling him. Makoto mentions that the Rembrandt sisters have returned home, but Shiki reveals a report from Lime, and it seems the sisters came back and are making plans with the other students. Shiki believes that the demi-dragon won't be a problem for them at their current level, so Makoto decides to leave them be and tells Eris not to watch over them, but she reveals that there's a pack of demi-dragons near them, which could be a problem. Shiki wants to investigate the situation, while Makoto decides to take care of the dragons, but decides to leave one for the students to fight. During his investigation, Shiki comes across the sacred treasure of Elysian, the scepter of dragons, which he thought was lost when the nation was destroyed. He immediately contacts Makoto, who has also come across the sacred treasure. Shiki believes someone performed a ritual to activate the treasure, which is why the demi-dragons were summoned, and he thinks it's the work of the demons. Makoto reaches the pack of dragons, but he transports one away for the students to fight, and he then jumps straight into the demi-dragons with his mana matter. The dragons attack using their breath, but it has no effect on him. Makoto easily defeats the dragons and takes their meat for Mio. Meanwhile, Shiki comes across demons resisting the demon lord, but a few manage to escape with the sacred treasure, leaving Shiki with no useful information. The students prepare to fight the demi-dragon, and they get into their battle formation. Dinah distracts the dragon, and Jin uses this opportunity to slash it. It attacks with its breath, which the students try to block with their shields, but it's too much for them to handle, so Masuri uses an enhancement skill to absorb the fire. Dinah also uses an enhancement to boost all his attributes, and he cuts up the demi-dragon. Izumo stops its movements, and Masura hits it with his fire sword, while Abelia pierces it with her arrows. Sif prepares to use her most powerful spell, and Izumo traps the dragon in a barrier to ensure her attack lands. When the dust clears, everyone is happy to see that the dragon has been defeated, but Jin knows he has to get even stronger if he wants to find Miranda. We see Sophia and Lancer at the mage workshop that Jin mentioned, and we learn that Sophia is actually Miranda. She mentions how the workshop belonged to Ludo, and she thinks about Jin, but disperses the thought, telling herself that she's no longer Miranda. She notes how Ludo was the one who created her, but she's determined to defeat all the greater dragons and consume him. The summer break ends, and a festival will soon be held at the academy. Makoto is surprised to learn that the festival has a competitive tournament, and Shiki explains that guests from Lemia and Britannia are invited to evaluate the students. Ludo wants Makoto to check out the festival with him, but Makoto tells him that Mio and Tomo are also coming, so he should go with them instead. Shiki talks about the additional staff they will add to the shop, and Makoto believes the elder dwarves will be suitable for the job. Ludo wonders if Makoto hates humans, since he's kind to the demi-humans, but Makoto gets irritated and tells him to leave. Makoto notes that Ludo will be meeting important people during the festival, and he goes by the name False, whereas Shiki is interested in Ludo's experiments. A temple priest named Shinai arrives at the shop, and tells Makoto that people are concerned that his medicines are too effective for their price. Makoto thinks he's about to ask for a bribe, but Shinai wants him to let the temple handle his sales. Makoto doesn't fully understand his offer, so Shinai explains that the temple will help clear the rumors about his shop if he reveals his production methods. Shinai assures him that they just want to inspect the methods and promises not to leak them, but Makoto thinks this will allow the temple to make his products. Makoto knows that a few of their temple members, including their previous bishop, were involved in the humanoid experiments, but the bishop was killed by Rona. He knows that having connections with the temple will benefit him, so he agrees to disclose his methods. The next day, Makoto and Shiki visit the temple, where the bishop thanks Makoto for his understanding, and they plan to clear up rumors about his shop, along with helping him find a solution for his inability to speak. She suddenly leaves, and Makoto is surprised, so Shinai is disappointed with his manners. Makoto gives him everything needed to make his products, but he takes Makoto to answer a few questions while the alchemists do their work. Shinai is impressed to learn that Makoto has opened 2 shops in such a short time, so he wonders if anyone is backing him. Makoto says he doesn't have a backer, but the Rembrandt Company has helped him out. Shinai notes that the temple has the opposite relationship with them, and Makoto remembers that Patrick stopped worshipping the goddess after his family became ill. After they leave, the bishop tells Shinai that they just wasted their time, because Makoto blocked all their attempts to examine his mind and his mana. She also reveals that even though Makoto correctly explained his methods, with their current abilities, they only have a 50% chance of success, and they would need to charge 100 times his price. Back at the shop, Jin finds out that Eris has beaten the lizard man before, so he tries to find out how she did it. Makoto and Shiki return, and seeing Eris boast about her strength, they threaten to send her back to the demi-plane boot camp, so she begs for mercy and promises not to be so arrogant, while Makoto also tells Jin that he shouldn't come to his class if he plans on cheating. As Makoto walks through the town, he senses someone following him, but he pretends not to notice anything. When he heads into an alley, his pursuers launch an assault, revealing themselves as members of the Assassin's Guild. They attack him, but he quickly defeats them using his brid. There's only one man left, and Makoto realizes he's the same one who attacked him during the academy entrance test. Makoto sees that the assassin's blade has been fixed, and the man reveals that it was made from the scales of Lancer, but Makoto thinks it's a waste. The assassin keeps attacking, but it has no effect on the mana matter, and Makoto defeats him with a single punch. Makoto feels agitated, so he returns to the demi-plane and starts shooting his arrows. Tomo welcomes him back, and he wonders how her investigation of the demi-plane's climate change is going. She thinks they can wait to act on it after the festival, but reveals that she has found an effective method to solve the problem. She shows him a place where placing a mist gate will result in weather that's similar to Japan, but it's in the demon's territory, and they have a fortress near the area. She asks for his permission to get rid of the demons, but Makoto knows this will make them their enemies, so he decides to think about it before making any decisions. The festival begins, and Makoto's shop is filled with customers. He asks Shiki where Lime and the Elder Dwarves are, and he says he made them organize the line of customers outside the shop, so it won't be a problem for other shops. Makoto wonders how their sales are going, and Shiki reveals that they have almost reached their goal for the day, because adventurers from other cities have also come to the shop, so Shiki thinks about distributing vouchers in case they run out of stock. At night, everyone goes to Gotetsu to enjoy the festival, and Makoto wonders if they have enough staff to deal with the rush. Luria notes they were prepared for this, and her sister is also helping out. Makoto is surprised that Eva has the patience to wait on customers, but Luria mentions that she's only helping with washing the dishes. Meanwhile, representatives from Limia and Laurel meet. Laurel's representative Saritsu wants their priestess back, but the king of Limia notes that Chia chose to help Hibiki on her own. Saritsu thinks Chia is being put in danger, so they suggest Laurel should send their own forces to accompany Chia if they have a problem. Saritsu notes that Chia is irreplaceable to them, so she hopes they can reach an agreement by the end of the festival. On the other hand, Makoto and the others enjoy themselves, but we see they are being watched by Lily, and she's irritated by their foolish behavior. On the second day of the festival, the students are judged on their manners during a lunch attended by foreign guests. Makoto meets Patrick and his wife Lisa, and she thanks him for all he did for her family. Makoto is approached by Saritsu, but he sees her bodyguards are demons disguised as humans, and wonders if she's aware. He realizes that she knows about him, because she isn't surprised that he can't speak. She reveals she's an official from Laurel, and is responsible for looking after the priestess and Kamuro. She wonders if Makoto knows about them, so he mentions that their priestess is their people's spiritual leader, whereas Kamuro is a candidate to become a priestess. She finds it odd that Makoto is using something that Laurel considers a secret, but he has no idea what she's talking about, so she explains that two characters in Makoto's shop sign are characters from the Sage script, and it's something only a few people in Laurel know about. She wonders if Makoto is a sage, but he doesn't consider himself wise enough to be called a sage. Saritsu explains that sage is actually a person from distant lands who possesses inconceivable knowledge, which makes Makoto realize she's talking about people from other worlds, but he continues to pretend not to know what she's talking about. She tells him that Laurel offers protection to sages, so he would be welcome there, but he tells her that if he comes across one, he will recommend them to go to Laurel. She believes that the two heroes are also sages, and wonders what Makoto thinks about this, but he refuses to answer since he has never met them. Saritsu comes across Lily, who's surprised to see Laurel making contact with Makoto. She thinks about how Tomoki has been obsessed with Tomo, so she has to do something about them. She wonders why Saritsu met with Makoto, so she says she was interested in the medicines he makes. Lily mentions she also wants to buy Makoto's medicine, but Saritsu offers to get them for her, which makes her realize that she doesn't want her to meet Makoto. Lily reveals that Gritania's interest in gunpowder has increased, so she wants Saritsu to tell her more about its handling and its uses. Lily knows she's wary of her, but still thinks she might accidentally give up useful information, whereas Saritsu's guards, who have been charmed by Tomoki, will take care of the rest. Makoto talks with Patrick when he's interrupted by Ilum, but Makoto forgets who he is. He apologizes for not remembering him and offers to hear him out later, but Ilum declares he won't forgive him and will crush his students in the tournament. Shiki reminds Makoto who Ilum is and says he'll look into the situation tomorrow because he promised to accompany the students to their tournament drawing today. Tomo and the others draw straws to decide who gets to walk beside Makoto, and Ludo wins the bet, making Mio and Tomo angry. Makoto wonders if the sage script is like kanji and if they'll understand him if he speaks Japanese, but Ludo says that only the other heroes can understand it. They go to the academy, where Ludo sees Lily watching them, so he decides to leave, saying that he has something important to do, but everyone knows he's lying. They meet Makoto's students, and the Rembrandt sisters say that their father calls Tomo and Mio the pillars supporting Makoto. Mio is relieved that they didn't lump her together with Shiki, which surprises the students, as Makoto tells them that they are much stronger than Shiki. Makoto wonders where Ilum is, but Shiki mentions he has yet to arrive. He reveals that Ilum is a Limia noble, and is the second son of the Hopley's family. Makoto tells the students that Ilum will target them during the tournament, and even though it's because of Makoto, he won't help them, but the students are confident in their abilities. Makoto likes their attitude, but he imposes restrictions on everyone for their matches to make things more difficult. Shiki explains that by limiting them, Makoto hopes that they'll be more careful, and if they succeed, Makoto will take their training to the next level. Lily meets with Ludo, and wonders if the Adventurer Guild is backing Makoto, but he says that the guild doesn't support anyone. She mentions that Tomoki wants to make Tomo his own, but he was defeated by her, and she wonders if she can beat her. But Ludo tells her no, and warns her that taking on Makoto's company would be like going to war with the demons. She wonders why Ludo helped her before, but he says she will figure it out eventually, and that she should focus on making an ideal world for her hero, which makes her realize that he's telling her to focus on retaking Fort Stella. Meanwhile, the nobles try different methods to get rid of Makoto, but he stops all their attempts. The next day, Patrick tells Makoto that he's being summoned to the Merchants Guild, but their representative is Patrick's old friend, so he decides to go in Makoto's place. The tournament is about to begin, but Makoto sees that all his students are placed to fight against each other, which makes him realize the Hopleys have much more influence than he thought. The tournament begins with the first match between Dinah and Yuno, which results in Dinah's victory. The next match is between two of the highest level participants, Jin and Misura, who are both at level 97. They are provided with wooden swords for safety, and each one is given 3 dolls, which will receive any damage the student takes. The match begins, and Jin is the first to attack, but Misura defends himself. The match continues without either of them taking a hit, but Jin is declared the winner by the judges. The tournament continues advancing, and Makoto thinks the mage category is a complete mess. Abelia and Sif's match begins, and Sif attacks using a fire arrow, but Abelia dodges it. Makoto is impressed that she not only dodged it, but also completed chanting her incantation at the same time. But Sif's arrow returns and hits Abelia, so she uses this opportunity to use an earth spiral spell that summons a hand from the ground to hold Abelia, causing her to surrender. The guests think that Sif used her wealth to buy expensive equipment, but Lily is impressed by her desire to try new things, instead of settling on what they have. The guests think Sif's methods were underhanded, but Lily tells them if that's the case, Tomoki defeating demons from the skies is also underhanded. Limia's king agrees with her, and Ludo thinks they will be even more amazing after receiving the goddess's blessing. In the second round of the mage category, Izumo faces Sif, who covers herself with earth magic and attacks with fire blasts to defeat him easily. Meanwhile, in the warrior category, Jin faces Dinah, but the fight also ends quickly with Jin's victory. In the mage's final, Sif faces an older student who was good enough to get an offer from the court of Limia, but Sif quickly opens a hole underneath him, and while he's stuck, she uses a fire blast to easily win the match. In the warrior's final, Jin faces Ilum, but Ilum has a real sword and armor, whereas Jin only has a wooden one. The match begins, and Ilum is the first to attack, but Jin quickly knocks his sword out of his hand. Ilum starts chanting an incantation and attacks again, but the result is the same. Ilum asks the referee to help, and since he's biased, he tells Jin to fight more aggressively. So Jin goes on the offensive, as he kicks Ilum in the stomach, and hits him multiple times with his sword, destroying all his dolls to win the match. Makoto is impressed, since Jin's equipment was weak, but his level and instinct were way higher, whereas Ilum plans on using his magic medicine during the team battle. The winners of both categories face each other to decide the tournament's champion. Tomo and Mio think Sif has an advantage and don't believe Jin can win. As the match begins, Sif quickly stops Jin's movement by using the ground, and follows it up with a fire blast, easily winning the match. Patrick tells Makoto that he did all he could, but the Merchant Guild still wants to see him, since every nation has taken an interest in his company. The next day, the students are surprised that Makoto can't attend to watch the team battle matches. Jin reveals that there were changes to the rules, so their party can't have a level of more than 365, which means only 3 of them can fight. But the students keep winning easily against their opponents, which makes Lily think she can't allow another nation to get their hands on Makoto. Meanwhile, Makoto meets with the leader of the Rothsgard merchant branch named Zara, who's angry since Makoto hasn't met him, but Makoto says he had to wait a month to get an appointment. Zara reveals that he has been asked to investigate Makoto's company, because people think he's receiving help from the demons, but Makoto assures him that he runs an honest business. Zara believes him since the temple has also spoken in his favor, but the main problem is their distribution. He notes that they purchase raw materials through markets directly operated by the guild, but there are no transport records, so he questions how Makoto has been moving his materials. Makoto knows he can't tell him about the demiplane, so to trick him, he says that they use the same roads as other trading companies, but there aren't records under their company's name, because they borrow carts and wagons from the Rembrandt Company. Zara shows him a document comparing the materials he purchased from the market, and those that he used in his products, confirming he's getting materials from somewhere else. Makoto mentions this is the first time he has heard of their investigation, and says he would have cooperated if they told him about it, but Zara believes it's for the guild to decide if he's innocent or not. Makoto thinks it's natural for him to try to clear his name, but Zara calls him naive, and is surprised that he can operate a company. He wants Makoto to share his distribution methods with the guild, which makes Makoto think he's trying to extort him by offering conditions that he can't accept. Makoto offers money to solve this problem, but Zara thinks this just confirms that he has a hidden transportation method. He expected more from Makoto since he's involved with Patrick, but meeting him has made Zara believe that he got to where he is by luck. He wants Makoto to give them 90% of their monthly profits, since the companies that have complained against him earn much more than him, so they aren't going to settle for just a few gold coins. Makoto tries to convince him to make a reasonable demand, but Zara says that since Makoto already has demi-human employees, he could sell his products to demi-humans instead, and if he sets up his shop outside the cities, no one will complain. He also threatens Makoto that if he tries to solve the matter with violence, they will be marked as an ally of the demons. He tells Makoto to close his shop and return to Sage, and Makoto thinks that for someone mocking him, he's being kind, but Zara says it's because he wants Patrick to owe him. Makoto still has to tell them his distribution method, so he explains how he uses Tomo's teleportation spell, but doesn't mention anything about the demiplane. Makoto returns and explains the situation to Mio and the others, which makes her angry, but Tomo tells her to calm down. Mio thinks Makoto just wants to provide his medicines to everyone, so he doesn't need to get along with money-hungry merchants, but Tomo knows that this is all part of running a business. Shiki and Tomo think they should use this opportunity to side with the demons, and even Mio, who doesn't completely understand the situation, believes Makoto shouldn't side with people who want to extort him. Makoto reveals that he already intends to form a relationship with the demons, since he wants to acquire the land that Tomo showed him, but he will still try to do business with humans. He tells them about Kalneon and how it's his parents' home country. Shiki knows that Luria and Eva are also from here, and Makoto considers reclaiming it with them. Everyone is on board with Makoto's plans, and he thinks about how 2 heroes have already sided with the humans, so it won't be a problem if he has a connection with the demons. We learn that Ilum and Luria were childhood friends, and he thinks about how important she was to him, but in the present, we see him holding a magic amulet to use in the final match. Makoto knows he can't stay in Rothsgard if he joins forces with the demons, so he wants to do something for his students before leaving. He contacts Rona telepathically and asks her to remove the demons hiding in the city by the end of the festival, because he doesn't want any more trouble. Makoto talks to Eva, and she's surprised by his plan. He knows he needs to leave the academy, but before he goes, he wants to support his students by watching their matches. Makoto wonders what Tomo and Mio thinks about his students, so Mio says they're not as skilled as Toa and the others, but they have potential, whereas Tomo enjoyed Jin and Masura's fight and has offered to train Masura after the festival. The students play rock paper scissors to determine who will participate in the final match, whereas Makoto and the others realize that Ilum is using medicine to increase his abilities, but Shiki is more interested in his amulet. It seems to be disguised as something that increases magic resistance, but Shiki feels that in reality, it's absorbing something. Jin, Izumo, and Yuno are the ones to participate in the match, and Makoto tells Shiki to give them any weapon they need. The students also see that something is wrong with Ilum, but the referee decides to ignore it. Ilum thinks about how he can't forget two people in his life, one of them being Hibiki. We see that he wanted to help Hibiki in her battles, but he couldn't afford to leave the academy, so Hibiki told him to graduate, and they would fight together in the future. The other person he can't forget is Luria, but we see that when he met her again, she had forgotten him. He was glad that she was alive, but also hurt that she forgot their childhood promise. Ilum's friends arrive, but learning that Luria is from Kel Neon, they insult her for running away and not fighting with her family. Ilum joins in on the insults, but Luria thinks they have never faced death before, so they shouldn't speak to her like that, but Ilum's friends get angry, saying they wouldn't run away from battle like her. As she tries to leave, one of them shoves her, and that's when Makoto and Shiki arrived. Ilum knows he should have gone to meet Luria after that, but he is angry at Makoto, who keeps getting in his way. We see that it was Rona who gave him the magic medicine, but he needed more power to defeat Makoto, so she gave him the amulet. The match begins, and Izumo and Yuno attack Ilum's teammates, while Ilum attacks Jin and manages to drop him to his knees. Yuno and Izumo defeat the other 6 members, but seeing Jin fight, they tell him to wait since they planned on fighting Ilum together. Jin starts to break through Ilum's armor, and Yuno thinks they won't have to do anything, but Izumo notices that Ilum's dolls haven't been damaged. Ilum starts recklessly swinging his sword, and Jin asks the referee if they should continue, since Ilum is acting weird, but the referee tells them to proceed, since his dolls are hardly damaged. Jin asks Izumo and Yuno to assist him as he launches an attack on Ilum, but Ilum counters by biting his sword. Izumo makes a tornado, and Yuno attacks him with a combo midair. She throws her spear at his head, breaking his armor, but she starts to fall. The others attempt to save her, but they collide with each other, and Yuno lands safely using her magic. Ilum's dolls finally shatter, and Makoto is glad he witnessed the match, but the amulet suddenly starts releasing a dark aura, and Mio believes the mana is connected to Ilum's memories. Shiki notes he's no longer human, as he begins to mutate, and Makoto wonders who would do this. Shiki believes it's Rona's doing, which shocks Makoto, since she accepted his request to withdraw her demons. But she didn't say anything about doing nothing to Rothsgard, so Shiki thinks it wouldn't break her promise, which makes Makoto wonder if he is wrong in thinking he could associate with a demon. We see that Makoto asked Eva if she wanted to reclaim Kel Neon, since he wanted to restore it and hide his company there, but he wonders if it's even possible under the current circumstances. Meanwhile, Ilum gets completely devoured by the amulet, but he thinks about how he just wanted to apologize to Luria. Ilum turns into a monster, but Makoto decides not to interfere and just watch how his students will face the situation. Eva and Luria tell Makoto that people throughout the city are turning into monsters, but he calms them down and asks once again if they want to reclaim Kel Neon. They agree to help him, so he tells them to stay hidden until he finds a safe place. Makoto wonders if there is a way to turn Ilum back to normal, and Shiki mentions that there is a method, but it's nearly impossible, so he doesn't even want to try it. Makoto tells him to see how much damage has been done to the city, whereas Tomo thinks the situation is like the finale of one of her dramas. She wants them to fight and save everyone, which will earn them their gratitude, but Shiki proposes using the situation to get rid of some of the trading companies that are hostile towards them. He believes that the demons won't like them solving this crisis, but Makoto is angry at Rona for betraying him, so he tells everyone that they are free to act however they want, as long as they don't engage with the demons. Meanwhile, Io tells Rona how she's starting to act like Sophia, but she doesn't like the comparison. He's worried about Makoto's reaction to her plan, but she mentions that she hasn't broken her promise. She wonders how much the rings that suppress the goddess's power have developed, and Io mentions they are ready to be used. Makoto tells Eva and Luria to go to his shop, where his employees will take them to a safe place. Patrick and Lisa arrive, and seeing his daughters getting ready to fight Ilum, he starts to panic, but Makoto promises to protect them. Patrick is about to go to the Merchants Guild, and Makoto tells him about his meeting with Zara, but he assures Makoto that Zara is a kind man, even if he doesn't always say the right things. As they are about to leave, Makoto assigns them 2 lizard men for their protection. Reinforcements from the academy arrive to deal with Ilum, and they attack using all 4 elements, but are shocked to see that Ilum is immune to 3 of the basic elements, with only fire doing any damage. They ask for the goddess's blessing and increase their mana, but Tomo thinks it won't make a difference unless they have other fire users. They attack again, but it just increases Ilum's power, and he easily takes them out. Shiki reports that around 50 monsters have appeared throughout the city, with the teleportation circles having been destroyed, and there's also some kind of telepathic interference as well. Ilum meets the defeated fighters, and seeing the Academy's strongest fighters being killed so easily, makes the students question if they are strong enough to beat him. Mio is disappointed in them, and thinks that Shiki should have taught them better. Makoto tells Mio and Shiki to give instructions to the students, and they can help them if they are about to be killed, while he plans to save the guests, so they will feel indebted to them. The guests are confused about what they should do, when Makoto and Tomo arrive to calm them down. The Academy headmaster wonders who they are, so Makoto tells him he's a part-time teacher, and he's there to help them escape, but the headmaster wants to know what he plans on doing. Tomo tells him to just think of a safe place and she will teleport them there, but he believes it's impossible for her to teleport so many people to a place she has never been before. Ludo asks her to teleport him to the stands, and Makoto realizes that he's acting like they have never met, so he can be a guinea pig to show everyone Tomo's power. She teleports him, and everyone realizes her power is real, so they ask her to teleport them as well. The king of Lemia decides to stay since he must oversee things here, and tells his followers to go without him, but Ilum's father also decides to stay. Tomo gives her sword to Makoto, and she leaves with everyone else. The king asks Makoto to take them in front of Ilum since he's a Lemia noble, and if he doesn't try to stop him, the people will turn against him, hoping Ilum will return to his senses if they talk. Makoto teleports them, and they try talking sense into Ilum, but it's no use, as he keeps going on his rampage. Ilum's father wonders if there is any medicine that will turn him back to normal, but Makoto has never seen this kind of mutation. Jin and Masura manage to cut one of his arms, but everyone is shocked to see it regenerate immediately. Another monster from the city arrives, and the king's guards try to stop it, but they are no match. Makoto tells Shiki to heal the guards, but the king's son rushes towards the monster. Makoto uses his concealing kai to keep his mana hidden from everyone, and he uses his mana matter to punch the beast away, but as he catches the son, he realizes that he's actually a girl. Makoto uses non-elemental magic, and takes out the monster with a single shot. Meanwhile, the students keep attacking, but Mio tells them that Ilum will continue to regenerate if they attack him half-heartedly. Ilum is about to let out a roar, just like the one from the demi-dragon, and Abelia tries to protect everyone, but she's too late. She asks Sif to put her fire spell on her arrows, but Sif says that it will explode in 10 seconds. Abelia tells her to go through with it, since Ilum's roar has already caught the others, so this is the only option to take him down. Sif lights her arrow on fire, and Izumo sends her up into the air to get a clear shot at Ilum's head. Ilum grabs his arm to throw at Abelia, and Sif tries to stop him, but he still manages to throw it. The arm grazes her, but she still shoots her arrow, and it blows him to pieces. Ludo talks with Tomo about how Makoto has started to intervene in the world's problems, and thinks he could have acted way sooner. Tomo mentions that Makoto has his own values, and Ludo wonders if Makoto has started to change, but Tomo believes that he has yet to decide his place in this world. She also believes that Makoto's abilities have fully blossomed, so even though Ludo is a greater dragon, The most he can do is scratch him, which makes him think that Makoto might become strong enough to kill the goddess. Makoto is surprised to see Abelia defeat Ilum, and he apologizes to the king for what happened to him, but the king shows admiration for the students and wants to hire them as mercenaries, whereas the king's daughter asks to talk to him after things calm down. The king thinks Makoto should kill the monsters since he's incredibly strong, but Makoto mentions that the academy is already on the job, so they will rescue the citizens, which makes the king think that he's just like the hero when he descended to this world. The king tells his daughter to send their troops into Rothsgard, and also notify the kingdom of the current situation. Jin talks about how even though he was angry at Ilum, he still couldn't bring himself to kill him, but Makoto thinks it's a normal reaction since he was fighting a human. Jin thinks he was naive, since he wanted to turn Ilum back to normal, but Makoto considers this one of his strengths. He tells them that monsters have appeared in Rothsgard and the surrounding cities, and Dinah thinks they should help exterminate them, but Makoto wants them to evacuate since they're just students, and it isn't their duty to fight. He tells Mio and Shiki to escort them to a safe place, and guard them for the night while he goes to check the city. Makoto falls to his knees when he sees that his shop has been destroyed, but luckily, all his inventory was already sent to the demiplane. He suddenly hears screams, and as he checks it out, he comes across an octopus monster attacking a brothel. He tells everyone to evacuate the building, and defeats the monster using a fireball. A girl named Estelle thanks him, and mentions that her friends are big fans of his energy drinks. She wonders if Makoto knows of a place where they will be safe, so he advises them to head to the slums. Meanwhile, Mio and Shiki are escorting the students, but she tells them to go ahead without her, as she goes back to Ilum's body, because she knows he's still alive. Ilum knows who she is, and Mio is surprised that he can talk since she thought his personality was gone. He says he turned into a monster and was still defeated, but he no longer feels the anger, and Mio mentions that it's because he's just a mass of flesh that contains his memories. He mentions he won't harm Luria, but she doesn't understand what he's talking about. He talks about how he was obsessed with her, but now he cares more about achieving his ideals. He thinks he can hide this body with armor, and even if he can't pursue his goals in the daylight, he will still act as a shield for Hibiki, but Mio cuts him up, and he's confused why she's doing this, since he has no intention of hurting them anymore, but she says it doesn't matter, and it's because he caused problems and insulted Makoto. Ilum says he doesn't have anything to offer, but Mio decides to settle with taking his life. She attacks him, but is surprised to see that he's resistant to dark magic. He asks her if Makoto really hates him this much, but she tells him he's just like a pebble to him, so he asks her why she's doing this, but she keeps attacking him with her dark magic until nothing is left, and reveals it's because she couldn't forgive him. Makoto receives a report that there are 80 mutants in the city, and the teleportation circles and communication networks are being destroyed. The roads are also at a standstill, and people trying to evacuate the cities are being attacked by the mutants. Shiki reveals the magic device responsible for the communication problems, but he was unable to find them before they were activated. Mio wonders why these devices only affect human telepathy, since they can still speak telepathically, and Tomo reveals that it's because their telepathy is based on the type that demons use. Tomo thinks the other nations are going to send their reinforcements soon, so they should act as well, to stop them from stealing their glory. Makoto wonders why they haven't asked for Tomo's help when they know she can teleport, so she reveals they already asked her several times, but she has told them that she teleports using her sword, and if she teleports too many times, it will shatter. Shiki notes that the number of mutants is increasing, and Aqua and Eris mention that they should look for accessories like the amulet that Ilum was using. Lime notes that the humanoid experiments are also connected with this, and reveals that the same drugs were found in the sample they took from a mutant, which makes Makoto wonder what the demon's goal is. The next day, Makoto talks with a demi-human named Bowl about how the friction between humans and demi-humans has died down, and he wishes this will result in better relations between them in the future. After that, he tells Aqua and Eris that they are going to work with the extermination forces, and they are excited to finally get a chance to fight. Makoto meets Estelle and tells her he's going to check on the city since things in the slums have calmed down. She promises to tell her boss about him after this is all over, and thinks it will produce new opportunities for his business. Makoto tells the headmaster that they should evacuate the citizens, which makes him angry, but Lily and Saritsu arrive and speak in favor of Makoto. He tells Makoto that he's responsible for exterminating the mutants in the northeastern section, and allows him to use his employees and students as well. Lily reveals that Tomoki is about to arrive, and Saritsu mentions that if their telepathic message has gotten through, supplies will also be coming soon. Makoto realizes that Tomo was right when she said the other nations have started to act, while Lily asks to speak with him after the situation has been dealt with. After that, Tomo thinks things are going well for them, but Makoto notes that the Merchant Guild is in the northeastern section and he hopes they won't give him any trouble. Tomo assures him he will do fine, and Makoto is determined to make everyone remember them. Makoto and the others realize the students are anxious because there were mutants that appeared among them, so they decide to do something to help them. Makoto meets with his class and mentions how the situation in the city isn't getting any better since the number of mutants isn't decreasing and help from the other nations is yet to arrive. They offer to help out, but he says they aren't ready, and he asks them what will happen if the academy is attacked in their absence, so they decide to stay back, and he tells Aqua and Eris to protect them. As they reach the Merchants Guild, they see the two lizard men who were assigned to Patrick, which means he must also be there. They meet Patrick, who is worried about his daughters, but Makoto assures him he has nothing to worry about. Makoto sees Zara, and thinks he's his least favorite person since meeting the goddess, but is surprised to see him act nicely, and Patrick notes that even he can't act tough after Makoto assigned them such dependable guards. Makoto wonders how much damage has been done to the city, but Zara notes they don't know the specifics, and they can't do anything without adequate forces. Patrick mentions Zara is handling the situation well, because some of the guild members lost their minds after suffering significant financial loss. Makoto assures them that they will take care of the mutants, and he tells Patrick to call his forces back, which surprises him, because even this situation isn't a threat for Makoto. He mentions they defeated 15 mutants on their way there, but there are still 9 more in the area. He reveals that the Academy has identified the accessories causing the mutations, so the guild should help them in retrieving them. After they leave the guild, Makoto starts a contest between Mio and Shiki to see who can defeat more mutants, and he will give the winner anything they want. Back at the guild, Zara notes how it took 50 mercenaries days to take out only 4 mutants, so he's surprised by how Makoto was able to defeat 15 of them, even though he's just a boy who's scared of him. Patrick notes how he's disappointed in him, because he thought he would be able to see who Makoto really is. Zara mentions Makoto doesn't know anything about being a merchant, but Patrick mentions they were just like him when they first started. Zara thinks Makoto is too naive and won't get far, but Patrick believes that no merchant can negotiate with him after seeing his strength. Zara wonders if Patrick is suggesting they use force to bend trades in their favor, and he thinks they would be punished by the goddess if they did that. But Patrick thinks her punishment won't reach them, and he will keep supporting Makoto's company. Tomo tells Makoto she has collected all the accessories, and mentions she gave Zara food and supplies, telling him to mention their company name while distributing it. She sees Mio is in a great mood, so Makoto tells her about the contest between Shiki and Mio, and she can't believe the winner will get anything they want, so she begs him to hear her request as well. Makoto thinks about heading to the northwestern section, but we see he has already sent Mondo and Lime to help out. At the academy, the headmaster wants the students to fight the mutants, so Aqua and Eris decide to use their killer technique to stop them from leaving. Aqua feels embarrassed about the dance needed for their spell, so Eris offers to do it alone, but she needs Aqua's mana. So she tricks her into holding her hands, and forces her to dance with her, but Aqua kicks her away and completes the spell on her own. She covers the academy in ice, but afterwards she realizes that they're also trapped inside. Mondo apologizes to Makoto on behalf of Aqua and Eris, but Makoto tells him it's not his fault. Shiki mentions there is enough food in the dorms to last everyone a couple of days, so they decide to leave them for the time being. Tomo mentions they will continue distributing supplies, and when help from other nations arrives, their job will be done. Shiki notes that afterward, the humans will realize they are at war with the demons, which makes Makoto wonder if he's planning on exposing the demons. Shiki mentions he has done something to the accessories, so that when the humans examine them, they will learn that the demons were behind this. Makoto wonders if this will be bad for them, but Tomo notes that no one will think he is their enemy because they did everything in their power to help during the crisis. Makoto gets inside the ice barrier, and Aqua wonders how he got inside, so Eris mentions he came from the ground. She also tells him there's a mastermind in the luxury houses who is using equipment to attract the mutants. Makoto wonders if they want to get out of the barrier, but they decide to stay since they are afraid of what their master might do to them. At night, Makoto is approached by Saritsu, who on behalf of the three nations, requests him to restore their telepathy. Meanwhile, Ludo is impressed by the ice barrier and asks Mio if she has told Makoto about a certain situation, but she notes they have decided to resolve it themselves. She reveals the demons had a collaborator other than Rona, and Mio will be dealing with them tonight. Makoto asks Tomo if he can restore telepathy in the city, so she tells him it's fine, but when she sees Ludo's reaction, she believes he's hiding something. Makoto shoots a fireball into the sky, which explodes and spreads across the city. Ludo wonders if he destroyed all the devices planted by the demons, but Tomo mentions there are ways to restore telepathy without destroying them. With the telepathy restored, the three nations realize they are all being attacked by the demons, so they know the only way for them to return to their own nations is if Makoto teleports them. They think that the demons might have disguised themselves as humans, and Makoto remembers how Saritsu's bodyguards were also demons. Lily wonders about Ion's forces, but they have been stopped in the neighboring city and are unable to move. Limia's king asks Makoto to teleport him and Lily, but Tomo notes that her sword is reaching its limit. They ask Makoto to convince her to help them, so he goes along with her act and says he will help them since it's an emergency. She opens two mist gates to teleport them, and the king tells his daughter to stay there to support the neighboring cities. After they enter the gates, Tomo's sword breaks, and she falls to her knees, which makes everyone believe her story. At night, Shiki talks with Makoto about how if the humans continue to underestimate the demons, they will suffer massive losses. He mentions the humans think what happened in Rothsgard was a decoy, but he believes that the attack on Gritonia is the real trap, and the demons' main target is Lemia. He thinks they want to get rid of Hibiki, and Makoto wonders why they aren't going after Gritonia's hero. Shiki notes that Tomoki uses his eyes to charm others, whereas Hibiki has innate charisma, so she will be a bigger threat to the demons in the long run. Makoto notes he doesn't owe anything to the heroes, but he would still like to help them, since they all were summoned from the same world. Makoto wonders what they should do next, since they can't teleport anymore due to the act Tomo put on. Shiki believes they should secretly send the denizens of the demiplane, but Makoto thinks they can't ask them to fight when they aren't going themselves. Meanwhile, Ludo thinks that Makoto restoring the telepathy was a genius move, because he has shown his strength to the nations and also gained their trust. The sky suddenly starts shining, and a beam of light tries to teleport Makoto and Shiki. They realize it's the goddess, so Makoto uses a chain to stop himself. But Shiki mentions if anyone sees them trying to resist the goddess, all their work will go to waste. They arrive at the place where Makoto first met the goddess, and he mentions he wanted to come back after he built the confidence to face her. There's no one sitting in her seat, but when Makoto throws his arrow at it, we see that there was a shield hiding her presence. She tells Makoto he was supposed to stay quietly at the edge of the world, but he mentions Tsukuyomi gave him the permission to act however he wants. She mentions she's sending him to Limia to help their hero, but Makoto tells her she should take care of it herself. She notes she can't descend upon the world whenever she likes, and Makoto mentions that even if he goes to Limia, he might side with the demons. She believes he has no reason to help the demons, but he mentions his hatred for her is reason enough. She calls herself the ruler of this world, so if he doesn't follow her orders, she will erase him, but Makoto believes that if she were able to kill him, she would have done it when she teleported him during his fight with Sophia. He calls her a failure, because she couldn't even make this twisted world fit her vision. She gets angry and is about to attack him, but a fairy tells her that someone from the original world has come to meet her. She tells Makoto she won't interfere with him anymore if he doesn't oppose the humans, but he says it's not enough and he wants a reward. She asks him what he wants, but Makoto has no idea, because he was just trying to annoy her. She tells him his time is up, but Shiki intervenes and asks her to give Makoto the ability to speak the common language. She fulfills the request, but it makes Makoto scream in pain and bleed. She tells him to help the hero and capture Fort Stella, but says she'll kill him if he fails. She opens a hole in the floor, and as they fall through the sky, Shiki is surprised by how calm Makoto is, but he says he's used to it since it's his third time. He asks Shiki to cover them in darkness to hide their presence, while he controls their fall. He telepathically communicates with Tomo and Mio, and tells them to take the orcs and mist lizards to Kale Neon. He wants Eva and Luria to act as well, and he also tells Tomo and Mio to install a replacement for him at the academy. They get excited since it's the first time Makoto has asked them to fight for him. So they go to the demi-plane, and Tomo tells the orcs and lizards that they have been personally chosen by Makoto, so they should use the strength they have built to crush anyone in their path. She opens a mist gate and teleports them to the front of the demon's base in Kale Neon, where they use Mio's webs to see how many enemies are inside. Mio decides to go first, whereas Tomo goes to secure the demi-plane's gate and tells everyone to stand back for a while. After she leaves, Emma mentions there are 2,000 demons in the base, while there are only 100 of them, so they must use all their strength to defeat their enemies. They rush towards the castle, and the demons try to stop them using arrows, but Emma makes a huge barrier around them. She applies a defensive spell on Agar, who bursts in through the front door, and they run through the demons. Meanwhile, Eva and Luria arrive in Mirage City, where they are told they need to develop the skills to revive their nation, and the demi-humans will help them. At the castle, Mio runs into a demon commander named Left, and she's surprised when he mentions he's a dragon, because he looks like a snake. She notes they are from Kale Neon, which makes him laugh, because Kale Neon doesn't exist anymore. But she says it was never destroyed, and it still exists there, but he mentions that the demons control all the territory north of Fort Stella. Mio mentions it's convenient for them to attack, because the humans can't object to their actions in an unknown land. On the other hand, Makoto and Shiki are still falling from the sky, and they see fire throughout the royal capital of Lemia. Shiki thinks a similar battle must be taking place in Britannia, and Makoto thinks it's finally time to meet the other heroes. Mio struggles in her fight against Left, because he keeps reflecting her attacks. She mentions that at first, she thought his size was just for show, but she's impressed he was analyzing her attacks. He wonders why she keeps using the same attacks, and she mentions she decided to only use the attacks she saw in Makoto's memories. She shoots a dark energy bullet at him, but he deflects it back at her, which makes her bleed. He tells her she's wasting her time, since he will keep reflecting her attacks, but she keeps firing the bullets. Tomo realizes Mio is trying to master the reflecting technique, and she's jealous of her, because she didn't run into anyone strong. She knows their victory is certain, so she creates a border around the kingdom by splitting the ground using her sword. Meanwhile, Sophia and Lancer find Rona in Britannia, and Lancer wonders what she has learned. She reveals Tomoki fights differently during day and night, which makes her believe his healing only works when the moon is out, but it doesn't matter since their real target is Hibiki. Lancer mentions Lily has returned, and is commanding the Imperial forces, so Rona thinks they should head back to Fort Stella, but Sophia is interested in fighting Tomoki. She sees him flying on a dragon with his friends, and Lancer helps her get onto it. Tomoki knows who she is, and she tries to attack him, but Genevia blocks her with her shield. Sophia smells her, and realizes she was given strength by a greater dragon. They are confused why she's attacking them, so she reveals that she's working with the demons. She asks Tomoki to fight her, and he tries to use his magic eye to charm her, but she tells him it won't work on her. She cuts off the dragon's wing and jumps off, telling Tomoki she will be waiting for him on the ground. After they crash, Sophia prepares to fight him, but he tells her not to underestimate him, because he's blessed by the goddess. The fight begins, and Sophia instantly stabs him with her sword, but it turns out to be a clay doll made by Yukinatsu. Sophia gets caught in the clay, and Yukinatsu notes that getting out of it won't be easy, so they prepare to attack her while she can't move. Tomoki tells Genevia to stay on the defensive, while Mora prepares to help him attack. Tomoki summons all of his weapons to attack her, while Mora also uses all her strength. They manage to land a direct attack, which makes them think she's dead, but it doesn't even leave a scratch on her. Meanwhile, Lancer keeps killing Britannia's soldiers, and by absorbing their energy, he transforms into his older self and regains his powers. Sophia defeats Tomoki's group, but she's not satisfied, so she keeps hitting Tomoki and tells him to keep fighting her. She knows he has something hidden up his sleeves, but he's hesitant to use it because he's afraid he will hurt his friends. She offers to kill them so he can fight without any distractions, but he warns her that if she kills them, he won't use his trump card. He tells her to send his friends to the imperial capital, and in return he will use his hidden spell. She tells Lancer to fulfill his request, and after he sends them away, Sophia tells him to show her the true power of the goddess's blessing. He mentions the power isn't from the blessing, and he starts gathering energy between his hands. He fires the energy, and it causes an enormous explosion that leaves a massive crater in the ground. Sophia and Lancer manage to avoid the blast, but she notes that the attack was even more brutal than Makoto's arrow. Tomoki lies unconscious in the crater, and Sophia mentions the spell consumes the life of its caster, but what makes it even more dangerous is that even if you manage to avoid the direct blast, you will still be affected by a poison or a curse. Lancer begins feeling the spell's effects, but Sophia heals him and sees that Tomoki seems unaffected by it. She connects telepathically with Rona and tells her the mana she sensed was from Tomoki. She asks Sophia if she killed him, but she lies to her and says he got away. They're about to return to Fort Stella, but Sophia is shocked when she sees Makoto coming to Lemia, so she and Lancer decide to face him. Meanwhile, Makoto notes that he needs something to hide his face, because he can't have people recognizing him. Shiki mentions he can turn back to his skeleton form, and he also has something for Makoto. In the Lemia Kingdom, Hibiki is told that the demons are easily defeating their forces, so they have no option but to retreat. Chiya wonders what will happen to everyone else if they run away, and Hibiki mentions they have to support the hopes of the people who have died, and it's their responsibility to win this war for them. A soldier arrives and tells them they are hoping to evacuate 30% of the citizens, but as they are about to retreat, Io arrives in front of them. He tells Hibiki if she decides to escape, they will kill everyone there, because this is a war between species that will end in extinction or the enslavement of one side. Io tries to punch her, but she blocks it with her sword, and she praises Biren for his craftsmanship, because it's not only strong, but it's also enchanted with wind magic. Her friends apply their spells on her, and she tries to hit Io, but he blocks her attack, and follows it up with a barrage of punches. Hibiki realizes he's wearing an elemental gauntlet on all four of his arms, and they are enchanted with all four elements. Io is about to pummel her into the ground, but Makoto comes to her rescue wearing Mio's hero suit. He realizes the suit has left them speechless, but he's shocked when he realizes Hibiki is the hero, since she was his senior in the other world. Shiki also arrives in his skeleton form, and Makoto tells him to save Hibiki, but also not mention his name in front of her. She wonders if they're here to help, and he's distracted by what she's wearing. He turns on his voice changer, and tells her he has come to save her, according to an agreement with the goddess. Makoto tells Io if he retreats, he won't allow the humans to chase him, but Io refuses to leave without killing Hibiki. He tries to punch Makoto, and he easily blocks the attack, which impresses Hibiki and the others, but they tell him not to engage in a battle of strength. Io manages to hit Makoto, but he counters with his own attack, and manages to push Io back. Hibiki thinks they should help Makoto, but Shiki notes they will only get in his way. He sees the sword Hibiki is holding, and wonders if she bought it from Makoto's company in Sage. He notes that he once experimented with feeding wind spirits to monsters in the wastelands, and the sword she's holding was made using material from his experiments. They are attacked by two other demons, but Shiki makes a barrier around them and tells them to stay inside. He mentions their agreement with the goddess doesn't include the safety of her friends, so he doesn't care what happens to them. The demons attack Shiki, and one of them fires an arrow, but he burns it before it can reach him. Shiki breaks 4 of his rings, and as he taps the ground with his sword, spikes appear from the ground and pierce one of the demons. The demons try to fight back, but Shiki uses his flames, and instantly burns both of them to ash. Io sees Makoto looking at Shiki's fight, and asks him if he thinks he can defeat him as easily. Makoto mentions Io is stronger than him in hand-to-hand combat, so he doesn't think the fight will be easy, but Io notes that none of his attacks have been effective against him. Makoto wonders if he doesn't care that his allies are dead, but Io notes that everyone who came there had the resolve to die. Makoto asks Shiki to do something, and Io realizes Makoto doesn't intend to fight fairly. He mentions their goal is to protect the hero and take Fort Stella, and he also might have to fight someone else in the near future, so he can't expose his hands so quickly. Makoto's suit fires homing missiles at Io, and even though he destroys most of them, he still gets hit and is shocked, since he has never seen such a weapon. Makoto follows it up by shooting an anchor at him, and as it hooks onto his body, Makoto uses it to pull himself toward Io, and he punches him in the face. Io stumbles from the hit, so Makoto continues his attack, but is surprised that he has already regenerated. Io tries to hit Makoto when he's mid-air, but Makoto uses boosters to start flying and dodges his attack. He kicks Io, and tells him he should retreat, but he regenerates once again and starts punching Makoto. Hibiki worries about him, and Shiki opens the 7th gate, which covers the entire city in a weakening fog. Makoto takes all of Io's punches, but he's completely fine. Io mentions he would love to fight him more, but the situation doesn't allow it, and he suddenly lets out a roar. He notes that he just told all his soldiers that it's time, and he shows Makoto the rose sign he got from Naval. Shiki tells Makoto what it is, but he sees they have modified it. Io mentions that no one will return alive from here, because the demon soldiers will use the rose sign to slaughter all the humans. He deems Makoto a worthy opponent, so he breaks the rose, and gains a massive boost in power. Hibiki and the others try to go to the city to protect everyone, but Shiki makes a barrier to stop them. They try to convince him to let them leave, so he tells them if they can break through the barrier, he will consider allowing them to go. Hibiki starts hitting the barrier, but she isn't able to damage it, and she eventually passes out. She wakes up in a mysterious place, where she hears a voice of a man, but she worries she doesn't have time. The voice notes that only her consciousness is there, so any time she spends there will only be a moment in the real world. He mentions that Tomoki also came there, and notes she has gained the traveler's privilege, but she's only interested in whether it can make her stronger. The voice asks her a few questions, and afterward reveals that her color is black, which is one of the highest ranking colors. He mentions Tomoki got the same result, and notes that the gods can never get this color. Black is also known as the all color, because it can do almost anything. He prepares to make her an ability, but mentions she can't choose an attack, because it was already selected by Tomoki. She wonders if she can have the ability to conquer the world, and the voice notes it would require all of her mana, along with 80% of life in the world. So she decides not to select it, and asks him about an ability to dispel all spells, but he mentions she can just learn dispelling magic on her own. The voice wonders what else she wants, so she asks for the ability to use the emotions of others to strengthen herself. The voice mentions it will reduce her maximum mana, but he fulfills her request, and sends her back to her body, where she uses her newly gained power to break the barrier. They are about to head into the city, and Shiki tries to stop them, but he senses Sophia and Lancer, so Makoto tells him to go with Hibiki. Makoto thinks about how he doesn't want to kill Io, because he wants to establish a relationship with the demons, so he must weaken him before Sophia and Lancer arrive. But one of their attacks suddenly interrupts the battle. Makoto knows he doesn't have time, so he uses his investigative Kai to find the rose sign on Io's body, and he uses his dispelling magic to break it, but Sophia suddenly appears, and attacks him with her sword, breaking part of his suit. Sophia praises him for surviving her attack, and she finds him stronger than Tomoki. Makoto wonders if she killed him, but she mentions he showed her something interesting, so she allowed him to live. He asks her to leave, but she considers him an obstacle, so she's determined to put an end to him. They are about to fight, but they are interrupted by Rona, who is surprised to see Makoto there, since she thought he was in Rothsgard. Io mentions his deal with the goddess, and Rona says she's disappointed in him because she was considering giving him an audience with the Demon King, but Makoto notes he never said he would side with the demons. She thinks he should thank her for what she did in Rothsgard, because it helped his business. He asks her if the demons have left the city, but when she says that they have, he realizes the demi-humans are also helping the demons. She tries to make a new deal with Makoto, and says she will assist his business in the demon territory if he leaves this place, but Makoto notes that she should be the one to retreat. She thinks he stands no chance against Io and Sophia, but he tells her not to worry about him, and even tells her to join the fight. Io tells Rona not to take Makoto lightly, because he couldn't defeat him even after using the rose sign. Rona gets angry at Io for using the sign, because it means death for its user, and Io notes that he couldn't just let his soldiers be the ones sacrificing themselves. She wonders how much time he has left, but he says Makoto destroyed the sign, which means his death isn't guaranteed. Sophia starts laughing, because Io couldn't defeat Makoto even after sacrificing his life, so she knows she must fight him with her full strength. Before they start fighting, Sophia mentions Makoto is the one responsible for the Star Lake, which surprises even Makoto, since he doesn't remember how their last fight ended. They start fighting, and Sophia suddenly disappears, but as she tries to attack him, her sword is stopped by Makoto's mana matter. She attacks again with dark magic, and Makoto sees she can use more elements compared to their previous fight, but it's also blocked by the mana matter. Sophia is shocked that he was able to stop her sword and the dragon flame, and she tries the attack again, but the result is the same. Makoto mentions that mana matter is the physical form of mana, but Sophia has no idea what he's talking about. Meanwhile, we see Ludo using Sophia as a camera, and he can't believe Makoto has turned his mana into a physical form. He remembers when Makoto asked him how to increase his mana, but he never thought he would succeed. In the fight, Makoto decides to attack, but Sophia dodges him since his attacks are slow. She starts teleporting, which makes him wonder if she's using the power of a shadow dragon, because she isn't doing it with the help of Lancer's swords. She uses fire magic to shoot a laser at him, but it also proves ineffective. Makoto attacks using light magic, and Sophia teleports to dodge it, but he uses his investigative Kai to find her, and continues firing the attack. He notices Io getting ready to fight, and he warns him to stay out of the battle, or else he will have to take care of him as well. Sophia regenerates from the damage, but struggles in the fight, so Makoto thinks they should end things soon. She mentions she devoured 2 greater dragons after their last fight, which makes Makoto realize she isn't cooperating with the dragons. She believes she's strong enough to destroy the nations, but Makoto thinks she's exaggerating her strength, or the world might be weaker than he thought. She reveals she plans on consuming 2 more greater dragons, which will make her strong enough to face Ludo. She transforms into her dragon form, but Makoto still thinks she isn't strong enough to defeat Tomo or Ludo, which surprises her, since only a few people know Ludo's name. She uses dark magic to weaken a part of the mana matter, and manages to cut it off with her sword. She keeps following this strategy, and Io also steps into fight, but Makoto grabs him and shoots off his arm, which blows him away, warning him that if he comes back he will kill him. Sophia manages to destroy all of the mana matter, but is shocked when Makoto rebuilds it instantly. On the other hand, Hibiki and the others are killing all the demons in the city, but they are suddenly attacked by Lancer's swords. Shiki makes a barrier to protect them, but Woody still gets hit, and Hibiki tells Chia to heal him. Lancer appears in front of them in his dragon form, and tells Shiki he will allow him to escape, but Shiki gets ready to fight, and mentions Makoto is his master. Sophia keeps attacking Makoto, but she starts getting tired, and he punches her into a wall. Rona watches from the side, and she believes her trump card will be able to destroy the mana matter. She prepares to use her spell, but Makoto tells her if she continues, he's going to destroy her. She thought he was naive when they first met, but he now seems like a completely different person, so she accepts his demand to leave. Sophia gets back up, and Makoto sees that her hand and sword are stuck together. She mentions her blade is a crystallization of Lancer's power, so the more she unleashes her dragon powers, the closer she comes to fusing with it. She mentions his attacks are weaker compared to Tomoki, but he says he hasn't met him, so he doesn't know if she's right. He tells her she shouldn't judge him based on one attack, because she hasn't seen everything he can do. Sophia starts praising Tomoki, which just makes Makoto laugh, because he sees she has been charmed by him. He mentions she couldn't resist his magic eye completely, and he mentions she spared his life because she's fond of him. He offers to dispel the charm, but this makes her angry, and she suddenly gains wings. She continues to attack him, but he pummels her to the ground. She believes that if Lancer were there, she could defeat Makoto with his help, but he mentions that it won't happen because Shiki is stronger than Lancer. Meanwhile, Lancer rains his swords down on Shiki, and he tries to burn them, but still gets hit by one of them. Lancer returns to his human form as he prepares to go to Sophia to pay Makoto back for their last fight. But Shiki tells him that he will be the one to pay for injuring his master. Lancer keeps attacking Shiki with his swords, and he manages to stop them with his staff, but he seems to be struggling in the fight. Hibiki asks him to dispel the mist so she can help him fight, but he notes he doesn't need any help. She tries to convince him to let her fight, but Shiki tells her that if she focuses on defending her friends, he will heal Woody after the battle. She decides to trust him, so Shiki dispels the mist, while Lancer prepares to attack him with his real swords. Shiki mentions how Lancer possesses 2 lives, and even though he's a dragon, he transforms into his human form to enhance his strengths, and he mentions it was Ludo who told him about Lancer. Lancer thinks he knows too much about him, so he fires his true swords at him, but Shiki makes a barrier that not only blocks the swords, but turns them to dust. Shiki turns his staff into the Dragon Slayer, and mentions that it's covered in poison and curses, but Lancer thinks it lacks the glow of a real blade. Shiki releases the 6th step and gets ready to attack, whereas Lancer kills the soldiers in the city, and turns them into his swords. Shiki rushes toward him, and he tries to block him with his swords, but Shiki breaks through them and cuts off his fingers. He continues to attack, and Lancer uses the broken pieces of the swords to fire an attack at him, but he's shocked as Shiki easily deflects it. Shiki keeps running through Lancer's swords, which makes him appreciate Makoto and the others, because he wouldn't have become this strong without their help. He sees the poison from his sword slowly spreading through Lancer's body, and he hopes Lancer doesn't notice, because he wants him to die a miserable death. Lancer again tries to attack with his swords, but Shiki continues breaking them and cuts off one of Lancer's legs. Lancer tries to kill Hibiki's party to get their powers, but as his sword is about to reach Chie, she's saved at the last moment. Lancer pierces Shiki with his swords, and thinks he has won the fight, but Shiki uses his skeleton form as a disguise, and splits Lancer's body in half. The others are confused about his identity, since he has turned into his human form, but Hibiki realizes who he is. He fulfills his promise and heals Woody, and Hibiki wonders about his master, but he mentions she doesn't have time to worry about that, since she has to take care of the citizens. Meanwhile, Sophia starts laughing after Lancer dies, because they had a bet that if he died first, she would get his remaining life and power. So she gets a power boost, and Makoto realizes Lancer has 2 lives, but he still thinks Sophia is no match for him. She notes he shouldn't look down on her, and mentions she's going to use her trump card, which took down 2 greater dragons. She uses her domain expansion, and mentions that it's a special space connected to where Lancer stores his weapons. Makoto realizes the space increases her power, and it shares existence and ownership with the swords. He notes that the swords are also her life, and by acquiring them, she has gained the skills that the heroes had in their lives. She thinks knowing this won't help him, but he's disappointed that she's using such boring abilities until the end. He takes out his bow and starts destroying the swords around him, which makes Sophia mad. She attacks him and damages the mana matter, which makes him realize she's hitting much harder than before. He turns off his mana matter and starts shooting lightning arrows which destroy a large amount of the swords. Sophia loses all hope and says she can't die since she hasn't even met Ludo, but Makoto tells her she's being used as his camera. He prepares to finish her and shoots an arrow at her, but she finds a Japanese sword hidden by Lancer and destroys the arrow before it reaches her. With the new sword, she easily breaks the mana matter, so Makoto turns his suit to its speed style and uses the mana matter to elevate himself into the air. He shoots an arrow at her, but she destroys it and rushes towards him. But before she can hit him, he disperses the mana matter below his feet to dodge the attack, and he hits her with 2 of his arrows, which causes the space to shatter, and they are returned to the real world. Makoto focuses his attention on Fort Stella, so he uses the mana matter to take himself up into the sky, where he uses his kai to see that Rona has evacuated her forces from the fort. He fires an arrow to destroy the fort, and returns to the ground where he meets with Shiki. He wants to return to the demi-plane to rest, and Shiki wonders if he wants to talk with Hibiki since he recognized her, but Makoto says they will discuss it later. Shiki mentions that Hibiki's party wanted to thank him for saving them, and he wonders what they should ask of them, but Makoto decides to think about it later, since they must be busy protecting the city. Makoto returns to the demi-plane, where he's shocked to learn they didn't suffer any damage during the attack on Kalneon. Tomo mentions she made a cliff around Kalneon to serve as a border, whereas Mio shows Makoto a small lizard, and reveals that it's the demon commander left. Makoto tells them about his battle, and praises Shiki for his help, which makes Tomo and Mio jealous. After that, Lime tells Makoto that the academy headmaster is begging for him to visit, and as he goes to Rothsgard with Shiki, he's surprised to see that a few mutants are still lurking around. Shiki mentions the academy's forces have withdrawn, and Makoto tells him to rest, because he hasn't been able to sleep due to Tomo and Mio, but he notes that he can't allow him to do all the work. So Makoto calls Lime and Mondo, and they quickly defeat the two mutants. They visit the Dragon Knights of Laurel, who are helping the people, but Tomo arrives and doesn't find them impressive at all. She's in a bad mood since she didn't get to fight anyone important, but Makoto reminds her she fulfilled her goal of bringing the 4 seasons to the demi-plane. He tells her not to sulk, and says he would still prefer her over 1,000 Dragon Knights, which makes her blush. Makoto's students complain about having to help clean up the city when Sif and Yuno are taking a break, so he tells them they're helping their father at the Merchants Guild, but we see Patrick telling them not to do anything since they are tired from fighting the mutants. Jin mentions that ever since Makoto started talking, they realized he's actually quite young, and Makoto wonders if his speaking has ruined their impression of him. He tells them to get back to work, and mentions there won't be any classes for a while, which makes them realize he has turned down the full-time teaching position. Makoto meets with Estelle, and she introduces him to her boss, but Makoto is surprised when her boss turns out to be Zara. He thanks Makoto for everything he has done, and notes that most of the merchants who were opposing him died during the incident. At night, Ludo apologizes to Makoto for not knowing the goddess was meddling in the situation, and also for having him fight Sophia. Makoto notes he knew Ludo was watching the fight through Sophia's eyes, and Ludo mentions it was just a precautionary measure, but Makoto says he knows he has a connection with her. Ludo thanks him for taking care of her, but Makoto mentions she isn't dead yet, and asks him to finish her off since he owes him. We see Sophia is still alive, and she believes she must defeat the greater dragon Motoki before she's ready to fight Ludo, but Ludo suddenly appears before her. She tries to use her swords to attack him, but he makes them disappear and asks if it's enough proof that he's the real deal. He mentions he has known about her ever since she registered at the Adventurers Guild, but he didn't think she was worth his time, which makes her angry, and she says she has enough power to kill him. Ludo notes she was just an experiment he created when he mixed his blood with a human, whereas Lancer was a fusion of 2 lives that he created on a whim. Sophia is mad at him for destroying her life, but he notes she's responsible for her own situation because her mind is weak. She gets angry and rushes at him, but he uses the same antimatter as Makoto to block her attack. He takes out the greater dragon's power from her body in the form of eggs, but he can't raise them, so he decides to leave them in the care of their guardian, and he teleports Sophia's body away as well. Meanwhile, Hibiki asks the king of Limia to allow them to go to Laurel. She can't tell him that Shiki told her to send Chia back to Laurel, so she just asks the king to trust her. In the demi-plane, they have a party to celebrate all their victories. Mio makes a special dish for Makoto, and he tells her it's delicious, causing her to cry tears of joy. Makoto asks Emma if Eva and Luria have gone to Kalneon, and she mentions they're in the Mirage City studying urban development under the Alki. After the party ends, Mio reminds Makoto of the promise he made to fulfill the winner's request, so he wonders what she wants. She asks him to allow her to attend to his needs, and he starts panicking when he realizes what she's really asking for, so Mio says she misspoke, and she just wants him to teach her how to process rice, but this makes Shiki and Tomo laugh, and Mio starts fighting with them, but Makoto thanks them for everything they have done for him. He mentions that without them, he wouldn't have been able to stay true to himself in this world, so to thank them, he gives them all his family name Masumi, and they all swear to continue to support him. But that's where this video ends. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.